It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott's here. Richard Campbell's here. Of course, their take on the CrowdStrike outage. In fact, I think we know why it happened. and it's not good. We'll also talk about Windows 11 version 23 H2. Fully available. Imagine that. It only took them 6 months. Finally, Microsoft's bringing ads to the Microsoft Store search box. You've been waiting for this forever, I know. And what did happen with Halo, the TV show? All of that and more coming up next on Windows Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell. Episode 891. Recorded Wednesday, July 24th, 2024. Scent of carbon. Hooah! It's time for Windows Weekly, the show where we talk about Microsoft and not CrowdStrike. So don't get your hopes up, buddy. Paul Thurrott there on the left. He is the man in charge, the maitre d', the master of ceremonies at Thurrott.com, THURRO.com. And writes his books at leanpub.com. And this guy on the right there, this cat here, he is Richard Campbell of .NET Rocks and Run His Radio.
Is that what we're doing now?
That's what. And I got your mugs.
Yeah.
I got your mugs.
Yeah, just rub it in my face.
Anything that's still in the studio at this point, it's staying in the studio. So it's no honor that your mugs are there. You notice that the inside was there.
In the set of like a post-apocalyptic movie someday.
I will
we're all
bring your
covered in
mugs
dust.
home. I will bring your mugs home. You're right. This is it. They're gonna and Paul Thurrott's going to crawl up on the sand and say, "You did it! You
damn dirty idiot!"
So, all right. I guess we should probably mention that there was a little problem with Windows machines. 8.5 million of them.
Yeah.
Starting on the 19th.
If you're a Delta customer, still problems.
I keep seeing pictures. Oh, my gosh.
Jeez, Louise,
I feel so bad. Christina Warren tweeted that she had a family emergency. She couldn't get home to Atlanta.
Yeah.
Because Delta, and she couldn't get anything. They wouldn't even answer the phone.
Yep. Well, they probably couldn't.
It's not that they wouldn't.
Yeah.
They'd like to. They wish they could.
So, I had a fairly terrible weekend because of this, and not for the reasons that would be obvious, but just because I had to deal with it from sort of, my angle. And, the first thing you see is that something happened and everyone blames Microsoft. And then CrowdStrike very quickly came out and said, yeah, it was us, So it's just, it happens. And by the way, kudos to them. They were at least transparent about it pretty quickly, right up front. That doesn't always happen. And then the weekend progressed, and there's a lot of stuff happened. But to me, the most interesting thing from sort of a Microsoft / PR perspective was that on, I don't remember actually, Saturday or Sunday, there was a Wall Street Journal article because everyone was writing about it. Everyone was publishing photos of blue recover screens, calling them blue screens of death, which drives me insane. And the Wall Street Journal buried the lead like in the last paragraph of this article. They're like, oh, and by the way, Microsoft said this never would have happened if the EU hadn't forced us in 2009 to allow other security companies to have the same access to the Windows kernel that we have. And I was like, I was like, wait, what? What happened? So this kicked off me going down a series of rabbit holes. Actually, the thing that really did it was I got onto Twitter, and Frank Shaw, the head of communications at Microsoft, ripped into journalists for not knowing, doing the legwork essentially to know that Microsoft was constrained by its EU mandated requirements. So I was like, okay, I got to look this one up because I don't remember this, right? I don't remember this. And here's why I don't remember this, even though I've been living and breathing this stuff like 30 years, literally this year, 30 years. It's because it wasn't 2009. It was 2006, and Microsoft was just about to release Windows Vista. But the thing that was held over their head at the time, one of the many things, aside from all the delays, was that the EU had concerns based on complaints from other companies that Microsoft was going to continue abusing its market dominance. And they were already under the weight of an EU order related to Internet Explorer and the bundled middleware apps, media player and all that stuff. The thing that resulted in the N editions, right, of Windows at the time. So late breaking in the game, Microsoft, I think it was September, October, right before they finalized Windows Vista, said, we're just going to fix these problems. And it was it was one of 4 or 5 things where, Google was concerned about being the default search in Internet Explorer, right? So like, all right, we're going to make a little interface people can choose. These security companies, which by the way, not European companies, it was McAfee and Symantec at the time, United States companies, were worried that Microsoft had created this thing called kernel patch protection, which was just going to be in the x64 version of Windows Vista, and preventing basically live kernel updates while the OS was running. So Symantec and McAfee said, well, hold on a second. We need to do that because that's one of the ways that we update our virus definitions and whatever to protect PCs. Like Microsoft has this new security thing at the time, Security Center, and they're not allowing us in. So Microsoft's like, we'll let you in, and we'll do it by Vista Service Pack 1, which is, by the way, exactly what they did. Although the actual, we don't really know the exact technical details of what they changed. At the time, Microsoft said, we will give them at least some of the access that they're looking for. Like they weren't really willing to open it up fully. And it's really not clear what they did exactly, but they shipped what they said they were going to ship. x64 versions of Windows since then have become mainstream, starting with Windows 11. That's now the only version of Windows, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the ability to patch a 32-bit kernel in Windows went away, or well, it's still out there technically, I guess, with Windows 10, right? But if you have a 32-bit version, but those are pretty rare, I would imagine. And so my take on this was the EU had demands, or had concerns, actually, not demands. Microsoft was the one who addressed those concerns. They brought these solutions to the EU, and the EU decided not to block the release of Windows Vista. So as far as I'm concerned, this came from Microsoft. This wasn't like the EU was like, here's the design of the kernel we'd like you to implement. Yeah. Why would they do that? But so the reason this was terrible for me personally is that we live in this age where big tech is finally receiving the attention it deserves from antitrust regulators, right? After skating free for like 10 plus years. And there's a certain contingency of the audience here who just feels that like Apple, Microsoft, Google, whatever, should just be able to do what they want. Free economy. Like if you don't want to have an app on iOS, just don't put it on iOS. Like that's some kind of a solution, right? And unfortunately, the message here delivered by Microsoft by Microsoft's head of PR, it's essentially communications, is if it wasn't for antitrust regulators, Windows would now be very secure. So there's a bunch of other stuff that goes into this. The part of the conversation was about Apple and the changes they've made to the Mac. Apple has, much more recently in time, instituted various kernel level and other security improvements to Mac OS that post-date what Microsoft was trying to do in 2006 by many years, but whatever, whatever. There's infrastructure, which is largely Linux based in the world, and Microsoft as well, right? There are PCs, and that's largely Microsoft and Windows based. And then there are some Macs, and there are even fewer Linux based PCs, whatever. So too much of this conversation was like, this didn't impact Linux and Mac. Linux and Mac are great. Windows sucks. And it's like, guys, come on.
Well,
I guess it's like,
and they did the same thing to Debian like 3 months ago.
Yeah, CrowdStrike did.
Yeah.
It's just no one seemed to notice that.
Oh, I didn't know that. Right? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's a little
patch
bit of an indictment of CrowdStrike.
CrowdStrike.
I didn't know they'd done this recently.
Like in April.
Yeah, like April. So CrowdStrike is the type of company that we have today. Microsoft is doing this too, for what it's worth, right? We live in a world where all of a sudden, for some reason, we are again deciding to ship early and fix later. And you see that when we talk, this is one of the things I've been complaining about for 2-3 years now, like this half-hearted, half-implemented thing appears in Windows. They move it around, they change it. And then, I don't know, like a year later, sometimes 2 years later, they kind of get it right. And, they're like, we're innovating quickly. And it's like,
you can't do this Ring Zero stuff.
You cannot do this with security. Exactly. Especially
CrowdStrike also has a reason to move quickly. They are dealing with a known 0-day vulnerability.
Right.
That doesn't mean they shouldn't run their software before they ship it, but
they've explained it themselves. I look, I don't want to.
We don't really know what happened still. Is that
exactly?
right?
In
other words, Steve was saying, it could have been that 921 sensor was corrupted in the CDN, for instance, that maybe they did test it. Maybe they did everything right.
Because they rolled back
CrowdStrike came out today and said they screwed it up.
Yeah, they rolled back so quickly.
They've admitted it now.
Yeah.
They had rolled back within the hour.
Yeah, but but it could, okay, let's say the CDN was corrupted. That would be how quickly you could fix that because it had the wrong code.
Look, there's a whole cascading series of problems. They
did put out a paper since Steve did his thing, so I'm curious what their
today.
What their
and Microsoft had
was.
rolled out a patch that you could install, which I played around with. I don't have a computer that was impacted, so it didn't do anything, but I got it to work. And here's the problem from our perspective. When you think about back-end cloud-based systems, whatever, those things go down. It's really obvious. If you go to the internet and you start typing in google.com, it doesn't come up. You're like, something's wrong. And you troubleshoot it, and eventually you realize everything else is working fine, but it's something wrong with the service, right? But when you go to an airport or a train station or a doctor or a hospital, whatever it is, and there's a blue recovery screen on the screen, which is in that case impacting what Microsoft described as a very small percentage of computers worldwide. It's just that they are public-facing customer service systems that, impacted people in the middle of trying to travel or God help them if they're getting medical care. And of course, you look at that thing and you think, wrecking Microsoft, And I appreciate Microsoft. Yeah, I appreciate them sort of wanting to set the record straight and maybe even lash out a little bit because they feel like this is unfair. I mean, Microsoft has a rich history of kind of understanding as the maker of the platform that when an app doesn't run or whatever it was back in the day, everyone blamed Microsoft, right? And anyone from Microsoft who was around at the time will tell you they go through they didn't call it this, but they would go through their telemetry data, whatever, and they would uncover it there was a bug, I think it was Windows 3 or 3.1 that was stop Aldus PageMaker from working. They couldn't ship the product, and it was a bug in Aldus. But they were like, look, people are going to blame us. We're going to fix it. And it's just going to be in the product, and no one's going to celebrate us for something working. But when it doesn't work, they're always going to look at us, and that's still true today. Obviously, still true. We just saw it; it happened. It was instantaneous, right?
There's also an argument that CrowdStrike did not need to be a ring zero. That there are now API level calls they could have been calling to do the things they wanted to do. But why rewrite your code?
You're that, I know, but how do you resist ring zero when you're the security company?
Same reason you want a sysadmin password, right?
And that's perhaps
Microsoft can operate at ring zero. I mean, we have to have that capability, right? Yeah. I mean, that's the rationale.
So Microsoft's excuse was, we had to provide ring zero access according to the EU, so we do.
Right.
I don't. That's not
because Apple doesn't. Apple blocks as of recently.
Never said, listen. Yeah. It's got to be ring zero access. They don't have that level of understanding. They weren't designing the API. They were like, look, these companies complain. We think there's by the way, the big complaint with security with Windows Vista from the EU's perspective was not this thing we're talking about now. It was that there was a UI in Windows Vista called Security Center that would notify you of things that happened with Windows Defender or whatever that was called at the time, but not of third-party tools.
Right.
So they were like, we want to be integrated in that. And Microsoft was like, okay. And that has come and gone. No one talks about this anymore. No one cares. But at the time, this was big stuff. And this back end stuff, they were like, look, we looked at these changes you made in Vista. We think they have a point. What's your response? And their response wasn't, no one needs to be at ring zero. We're also not doing that, by the way. It was, we will give them at least some of the access we have, and here's what we're proposing. And the EU didn't actually say yes. They just didn't say no to blocking Windows Vista. That's how that went down. So I don't know.
So Microsoft blaming the EU is perhaps a little
far-fetched. Look, everything is a little more nuanced than the black and white.
The clever angle on this would be they're trying to stave off an investigation from the EU by getting in front of it and saying, you don't want us to say what we're going to say if you go after us for this.
Yeah, all right. But I feel like that maybe shouldn't have been communicated in the last paragraph of a single article in the Wall Street Journal on Sunday.
Well, admittedly, Frank put it out in a tweet, right? Like,
Yeah.
it was,
but to blast it so that the reporter or whoever wrote that article didn't do their legwork, because like I said, the date was wrong. And the inference here is the EU forced us to do something. Mm-hmm. And you see the thing, you got to remember the day. You got to remember too. This is literally right when we were starting this podcast. Mm-hmm. This thing's barreling down the pike. It's years late. They've never taken this long to ship a major new version of Windows. They're under antitrust scrutiny and a consent decree in the United States, and scrutiny and they don't really have a consent decree, but they're under order in the EU. And they're like, look, we can't afford. What would happen if they blocked it? We can't let this keep being delayed. So we're going to acquiesce. We're going to meet their needs. We're going to do what they ask.
What do we need to say to keep moving on?
But no one from the EU said this is what you need to do. They said make a proposal. Yeah. And they did. And the EU, like I said, didn't say yes. They just said nothing. Mm-hmm. And it went out the way it went out. And not just about exactly a year later, Windows Vista SPE1, you can look it up, did include this set of APIs for third-party security vendors. That's they released it exactly when they said they would. So, was it the EU's fault? I do think there's a better case to be made. And Richard kind of, I think, just said this, or someone said this. Microsoft has created APIs.
Yes.
For this. That exist in user land outside of it.
And that would be the other nuanced piece on this is now that this has happened, we are going to lock up Ring 0 and you're going to have to use these APIs.
Explain to me how Microsoft, a company that hasn't been under antitrust scrutiny on the client for over a decade, in that entire amount of time, shipped Windows 8, 8.1, 10, 3 versions of 11, and never once thought, hey, remember that x64 kernel thing? I don't know. Do you think we should lock that down maybe?
Because Apple did. Now, Apple only recently did this. It took them a long time because so many programs use it that if you just said you can't have access to the kernel, it would break a lot of stuff.
You're going to break a lot of software.
Apple gradually. It took them 5 years. They said, we're going to do this. We're doing it. Careful, we're about to do it. And they still give you an exception. If you really need to, you can override it.
To compare that to how Microsoft did it, aside from the fact that it was years earlier, the way that Microsoft did it was a year before this, Microsoft had shipped a product that was used by exactly 3 people called Windows XP Professional X64 Edition. It was the first, I did too. It was the first x86/X64 64-bit version of Windows on the client, right? With Windows Vista, they were going to ship both in the box. So every edition, Home, Pro, there were multiple, right? Remember Ultimate, whatever they had, would ship in both 32 and 64-bit versions. Most people installed the 32-bit version. Windows 7 came out 3 years later, same thing, 32 and 64-bit. Most people installed 32-bit or upgraded from whatever computer they had.
This change.
Windows 8, same exact thing. Windows 10, same thing. The thing that changed between Windows Vista and Windows 10 with this regard is that by Windows 10, most new computers, all new computers by this point, were 64-bit. There were no downsides to doing 64-bit. The driver situation was never really an issue. Performance was never really an issue. Compatibility, it's all there. Probably Windows 10, most of those are 64-bit. So with Windows 11, it's all 64-bit. So they announced this change in 2006, only on x64, and it wasn't until 2020 or 2021, I guess, that Windows was actually all 64-bit on the client. So that's the slow rollout right there. This was going to impact a very small number of computers for a very long time, giving everyone time to make the necessary changes and whatever and adapt. And honestly, it was probably even longer than the Apple schedule, right? It just would have happened sooner.
Yeah, and it makes sense because Windows is famous for not breaking legacy code. So if they are going to do something that's going to be this hazardous to legacy code, they're going to take their time.
Yep.
I mean, there's a bunch of things they could do in there. As soon as something called into the kernel level, it could pop an entry into the event log for an administrator going, hey, this is a security vulnerability. You know,
kind of what Apple does. If you try to install a kernel extension now, it'll say no. But if you really want to, go into the system settings and explicitly allow this kernel extension.
Right. Yeah. If you, Dave Plummer, that former Microsoft engineer from the 90s, did a pretty good about this.
Now, by the way, Chocolate Milk and Sip in our Discord is telling us the exact verbiage from CrowdStrike. The team member who created the problem, probably should say ex-team member, but anyway, the team member
who's now being drawn and quartered in our
he's being hung from his ankles outside our corporate headquarters. Who created the problem? See, here's what happened, and this should never have happened. Followed a template, and the template validator was not complete. In other words, they didn't have tests for the template that he used, or the tests weren't complete. So when he pushed it, the normal process would be you would have the tests run, and until the test passed, you couldn't push it.
They all passed because they
all passed because they were nothing. It's like pass. Right. That should never have happened on code that's running in Ring 0 or not. But especially,
I'll tell you what really was happening. His wife wanted to watch Netflix, and he's like, "Hold on, I just got to throw this patch in here. Just take a second." He was distracted.
You push the button, and everything
It's always
will be fine.
From the very beginning, without knowing anything about this, right? You have to, where your mind should have gone immediately, and I think it did for a lot of people, was this is human error, right? And once you know it's not an attack, right? Once you know it's not
the fact when the rollback came back that fast, you're like,
this was
you broke it. You knew you broke it. You did your fast best to fix it.
So look. I don't know. To me, it's just the finger pointing here is very frustrating. Our inability to see nuance in anything is continually frustrating to me.
Here's a fake
the way that Microsoft blamed the EU.
Oh yeah, that was so funny. Brilliant.
First day of CrowdStrike, pushed a little update, now taking the afternoon off.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Oh, but there is legitimate upset from a hell of a lot of IT people, many of whom listen to this show, who have very sore feet from a weekend spent going from machine to machine to machine.
You got to see my phone, man. This whole weekend was unbelievable.
The good news is,
I feel for these people
from a technical
and then all the Delta
perspective,
customers who are sitting at the airport today, unable to do anything.
My point about Delta though is this is on Delta now, isn't it?
Delta at this point.
You're telling me that everything went down for a lot of airlines on Friday. There were still some outages happening Saturday, maybe into Sunday, whatever. But you're telling me it's Wednesday? And Delta is still having problems?
Their crew management system was also using Falcon. And so they've lost actually all of their crew placements. So they have to restart that. And they basically have to, every crew member's got to call in and they've got to rebuild the catalog for where people are at. That's why it's taking so long. Well, and the reality is you have 1 day of displacement, right? Yeah. You have 1 day of displacement. It's a week to recover. This is an airline. And these guys are going to be longer than that.
Well, they're going to be lots of investigations.
The silver lining, I described this before the show as kind of a TSA situation. We're always solving the last problem. All right, now we know what to do. We're not going to let this happen again. And okay, good. That's good. The problem is the root cause of this, this kernel, blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah, thou shalt have not rights to the
this
kernel.
Should not. Come on, this is
be able
computer
to blueprint
science
this
101. This is they knew this in the 1990s.
Yeah.
This is not okay.
No.
What you're saying is there's plenty of blame to go around.
Oh yeah. Well, and the chances of us making real to Paul's point, we won't do root cause analysis because we don't want to do root cause fixes, right?
Yeah.
We'll fix our testing. Is as far as they're willing to go.
But from Microsoft's perspective, aside from what I said earlier, like they should have taken this responsibility on 10 years ago, whatever, let's forget about that. This happened. You just announced security is your number one priority this year. You do have that awful vulnerability. We still haven't heard the full story on, by the way.
Nope.
Here's an idea. Announce that you're fixing this right now. And guess who would say no to it? Nobody.
Yeah. Well, and maybe again, what that parlay about the EU thing might be the beginning of saying,
time to roll. Yeah.
They may even want the EU to come back at them and say, you shouldn't allow software in Ring 0.
This was so long ago that the person, I think, who at the time might have just taken over this job was Neelie Kroes as the EU commissioner.
There's a name that
those are the
resonates.
The good old days. Yeah, Steely Neely, as we used to call her.
Wow.
We didn't know she was the B team until her successor came around. But anyway, she was pretty good back in the day.
Along and Neelie Kroes seems like a good person.
The easy one.
She's a pushover, that one. But yeah, this is the time. Let's fix it. Let's do it right now.
Yeah,
And honestly, that's kind of my central point. Who cares about the finger pointing?
Right.
Look, it's like the old Microsoft. We're all pointing. We got it.
Yeah.
Fix the problem.
Yep.
Yeah. The future security, the Security Futures Initiative is a great wrapper for all of this.
Yep.
Although really, SFI was a Microsoft internal initiative to manage badly managed cloud accounts. Which is really cleaning up
the vulnerability problem, which was exactly what you said it was, by the way, which was there are a million VMs out there created by little project guys working on projects that they did the little thing, walked away from it, forgot about it completely. It's sitting out there with whatever access, and no one did any management work to auto unenroll those things or whatever, like ever. Yeah. So yes, I mean, that's obviously a huge part of it.
But a good point from our Discord. Does CrowdStrike, does Falcon work as well if it can't live in ring 0?
It should.
It should because
it doesn't need it. It shouldn't need it.
Those APIs are sufficient to give it what CrowdStrike does. They were a sponsor, so and I know I talked to their CTO about this, and the whole idea of CrowdStrike, one of the fundamental ideas is with all these sensors, it gets early warning on 0 days and other malware. So it's running at that low, not just as like an antivirus, but it's actually monitoring.
Well, no, but it's not the run level of the thing. The point of what they were doing was basically injecting what looks to the system to be a driver.
Right.
This is what they're doing does not require.
It does not need to do that.
Ring 0.
There are safer ways to do that.
Yep.
And the Windows APIs for that are sufficient to do that.
There's two pieces.
Unfortunately, they're UWP APIs, so no one knows how to use them. But no. I'm kidding.
Hey, good news. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
The other aspect.
When 32 is back, baby.
It was all these places did have it configured to auto update, right?
Yes.
Which there's plenty of IT people like I don't like auto update. I want to test myself because I don't trust these guys.
That's the other problem here, right? Here we go. This has been the central debate since Windows Update was first announced. I don't want in IT Microsoft dictating when and how I update my computers, right? You get this central divide between these kind of two theories that and there are lots of examples of Microsoft pushing a patch that screwed things up. Absolutely. To this day, everyone still points to, I think it was Windows 2000 Service Pack 4 or something, where we're still really burned about that one that went out horribly or whatever. But whatever. I mean, it was a million years ago. But I think there were more examples of maybe the reverse being a problem. Like the vulnerability was solved. We rolled out the update, but you, in your infinite wisdom, decided you have your own schedule and you didn't do it. So there's a debate to be had.
And this is also a security feature that's supposed to capture 0 days, which is why you're supposed to immediately install any updates.
Right.
That's right.
I did a show a while ago on Run As with Sammy Leho where we were talking about the fact that phishing had fallen to number 2 as the primary exploit path because MFA has worked as well as it has, and unpatched servers is now the number 1 vulnerability.
Yeah.
And the risk of delaying a patch is higher risk than just not installing the patch immediately and dealing with the potential manifestations of that. And then the Falcon issue comes along.
I hate to even say this out loud, but this is a fact, unfortunately. Like Microsoft has spent it's about 20 years ago now explaining and begging and whatever people that look, you got to let us roll these updates out. They've changed the way Windows works to make this harder for them or to shrink the schedules, et cetera.
They used to say they would only do security patches, but they lied.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So every month we have what they call a cumulative update. Ideally, that the only required part of any cumulative update is what the quality part. And actually not just the quality part, but because quality could include features and feature improvements, but rather the security bit. The problem is these things are all assigned a KB number, which is related to the security update part of it. And what we don't talk about enough, because I don't have enough to complain about, is all the other stuff that goes out with almost every single one of those updates.
Yeah.
And in Windows 11 in particular, it's been tons of features. One of them, by the way, was the entirety of what was going to be the entire new version of Windows 11 23H2 that they put out in September and October last year to 22H2 as a cumulative update. Oh, don't worry, guys. It's an enablement package. They have all these cute little terms for it. You know what it isn't? Just a security update. That's what those customers actually wanted. When we talk about how Windows 11, 22, 23, and now 24H2 all have the same feature set. And I joked, stupidly maybe, that everyone got what they wanted. Microsoft's customers who didn't want the feature updates are still in the version of Windows they wanted to be on. See, technically, pedantically solved. But Microsoft also got what they want because they got those features out there. Nobody wants the features. Well, some people do want the features, but what everyone needs and should have probably is the security updates. And there's no way to digest those as a customer without taking the other crap with it. This is the thing that started with, when they put IE into Windows NT. Remember, they were like, oh, you want the was it service pack or feature pack at the time?
Yeah, you got
option pack, whatever it was. You have to take IE, and it becomes part of the shell, makes the system less stable because it was written by high school students, from what I can tell. And you just did the worst thing you could possibly do to undermine the integrity of Windows NT. And
you know where we're going here.
That's your.
We got to keep Microsoft out of Ring 0.
Yeah, it's not right. Microsoft is not reliable enough to be to have that responsibility.
Yeah, you're right. There should be a team that maintains Ring 0 and pushes
that
their own
team
patches
should be
for Ring 0.
maintained by Linus Torvalds. And
that's not a bad idea, though.
Goes wrong.
That's like the vault. I mean, Ring 0, which is where that's the system space.
Would be the first time I've had the argument that Windows should be the GUI over top of Linux.
Yeah, well,
I
thought that would happen. Actually, I think I've said that on this show.
This has come
years
up
ago,
so many times.
That's inevitable,
times.
But
You know, we live in a world. Sorry, real quick. That Snapdragon X ARM processors can emulate x64, x86 code to such a degree that you couldn't tell. Are you telling me it's technically impossible or infeasible to do what Richard was just describing and have those APIs run on top of Linux?
Trouble. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
By the way,
you can't hack the Windows kernel because we're not running it.
Because it's not there anymore.
Very happy to say that my Snapdragon dev kit comes Friday.
Oh, there you go. You got it.
I got it. It rejected four different.
That's not my address, though. It's.
Sorry, I got the wrong address. Yeah. No, it turned down like 4 credit cards. This has been happening a lot to me lately. The credit cards just don't go through anymore. It's like, well, I don't know. It seems like a lot of bad guys are buying Snapdragon developer kits.
So that's how I got Slack just sent me a thing about that, and there was nothing wrong with the card.
Yep.
And I was like, I don't know, maybe this is how I get out of Slack. I just let this slide. Either you figure it out or we just part ways. Like, that'd be okay.
Something else.
Yeah.
More to come in just a moment with our esteemed team, and I'm very excited about getting that Windows machine. It's actually for the new studio. I mentioned this before in a couple of weeks. In 2 weeks from today, if all goes well, we will be closing down this studio, and you can see I've already taken all. Well, you can't see, but I've taken all the hats out. And I've taken all the books out. The Delphi 3 Super Bible lives in my new studio in the attic.
That was a load-bearing book, Leo. What are you doing?
It is a load-bearing book. I made sure that was strapped to the wall in case of earthquake. But that's where the Snapdragon will live. I have a table, a desk with a cage underneath, one for a Mac Mini and one for a Snapdragon, and I'll have access to both, which will be very nice. Yeah, I'm excited. So stay tuned for that. And of course, thanks to our Club Twit members who are making this all possible. We're doing it for you. We're cutting the costs.
I want to see like a PR from Qualcomm today. This is like Snapdragon Dev Kit sales have exploded today.
They doubled. Our show today brought to you by a name you will remember. I really love to get these guys on. I had a nice conversation with them. Experts Exchange. You remember that?
Sure.
Like in the 90s or the 2000s, you'd go to Experts Exchange and you'd ask a question and they'd get a good answer from a real human. And now, of course, that was such a good idea. There, almost an infinite number of companies doing this, but not well. There's a lot of snark involved. And the worst thing is AI. These companies are turning over all the content to AI and they're letting AI generate new content. Not at Experts Exchange. So if you have tried them in the past or the name rings a bell, time to try them again. I have a great offer that will make it something you really will want to do. Join a network of trustworthy, talented tech professionals to get industry insights and advice from people who are actually using the products in your stack. Real experts instead of paying for expensive enterprise-level tech support that often is less than expert. It's a tech community for people tired of the AI sellout. Experts Exchange is carrying the fight for human intelligence. They promise they have never and will never sell your data, content, or likeness. They block and strictly prohibit AI companies from scraping content on their site to train their LLMs. And their moderators, in this very nicely, heavily moderated, strictly forbid the direct use of LLM content in their threads. Other platforms may betray their contributors by selling their content to train AI models, not Experts Exchange. Your privacy is not for sale. And man, when you go there, you're going to get answers like you wouldn't believe, like the best answers. Access to professionals in over 400 different fields, not just coding, but Microsoft, Azure, DevOps, any area of tech. And unlike those other places, there's no snark. In fact, duplicate questions are encouraged. How many times have you gone to a thread on those other sites and it says, this thread's been closed? What a dumb question. No one should. No, not Experts Exchange. Their contributors are tech junkies who love to graciously answer all questions. And in fact, I think the real story here is that, and I think deep down we know this, the reward for becoming an expert is passing that knowledge on to help someone in need, is being able to say, hey, I've been there, I know how to fix that. You open the driver's CrowdStrike folder, you delete that file with the 921 in it, and you're good. You're golden, reboot. Being able to share that makes you feel good. This is why the experts are there at Experts Exchange. They get points. In many cases, they get continuing education credits. So there's a lot of incentive to be an expert on there, to be kind, and to help people. And that's why you want to use Experts Exchange. One member said, I've never had GPT stop and ask me a question before. That happens on EE all the time. Experts Exchange is committed, proudly committed to focusing and fostering on a community where human collaboration is fundamental, is encouraged. It's what it's all about. Their directory is full of experts, many of whom listen to this show and other shows. Rodney Barnhart is a VMware vExpert, Security Now listener. Edward Von Biljon is a Microsoft MVP and an ethical hacker. There are Cisco design professionals. There are executive IT directors. And there are experts. There are graybeards like maybe me, who, you say, well, I got NetWare 2.0. I don't know what the heck is. And they will say, oh, yeah, I can help you with that. That is awesome. That is awesome. Everyone deserves a place where they can confidently share their knowledge without worrying about some corporation coming along and stealing it to increase shareholder value. Humanity deserves a safe haven from AI. Experts Exchange. Now, here's the deal. Because they want you to come back and try it again. If you left as me, I stopped using it after, some years ago. They're going to give you a 90-day free, no credit card needed trial. So you can join them right now and get 3 months for free. That's how confident they are that you're going to get the information you want, that you're going to love being a part of the Experts Exchange. 90 days free, no credit card required. Go to e-e.com/twit. That tells you something. That tells you they've been around. They got a 3-letter.com. e-e.com/twit. It was funny. I still have the bookmark. I love it. e-e.com/twit. You get 3 months with them. No credit card needed. Take my word for it. You need this. You will want to have this the next time your computer. And by the way, Paul was very clear. It's not BSOD. It's recovery mode. Okay. Next time, dummy, your computer goes into recovery mode. e-e.com/
after blue screens. But you know what? Don't worry.
No, I love that. That's classic Paul Thurrott. Excuse me, but yeah. And by the way,
excuse me, sir. That's not.
I think you misunderstood.
Yeah, you keep calling
it is a blue screen. I get that, but
it's not of death. It's of recovery. It's a blue screen of recovery.
It doesn't say death anywhere. I don't know where that comes from.
I loved you for that, Paul. Are we done with CrowdStrike, or is there anything more you want to talk about?
I think
we've beaten this one to death.
Yeah.
I'm just excited about my Snapdragon developer kit. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I am too.
I mean, I was going to get that Lenovo that you like so much, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
But I have keyboards. I have monitors.
The Yoga or the T15 or the T14?
The Slim,
Right.
That Paul has, right? That's the one.
Although since then I've gotten the ThinkPad. It's like, oh, it's nice.
You like the ThinkPad better?
No, I didn't say that. I just got it, but it's this. ThinkPads.
I'm a ThinkPad guy, going way back.
Mm-hmm.
They're not what they used to be.
You're a number.
Yeah.
No, but you know what? It's this. You see this with HP too. Like a lot of these really premium laptops to get super thin.
Yeah, they got to do that.
They still pass all these mill tests or whatever, but they almost feel too light. They feel like cheaply light. Like it's how did they get this thing so light?
You used to be able to take a ThinkPad, take any component off and replace it.
You could nail a nail into a wall with it. Yeah. No, I mean you could.
And then replace the keyboard. Yeah, you totally could.
Yep. Now the magnesium. You remember it was like a carbon, or first it was magnesium, then it was like a carbon
fiber. Yeah,
what do they call it, a carbon composite something.
Right.
I think now they just pass it by the scent of carbon.
It's plastic.
It's carbon fiber to give you the.
But I love the old magnesium. Oh man, those are beautiful.
Yeah.
Such.
Well, they used to have that structural integrity for the drive bays and extra batteries and stuff.
And you could any component you could upgrade or take out and replace.
It's not like that anymore.
No.
Although.
The world has changed. Let's face it, the world has changed.
You know what though? I'm actually writing about this, so this is in my brain. But when Apple came out with the MacBook Air, one of the things it instituted was a decade and a half of sealed, milled aluminum CNC cases on premium laptops, where you couldn't get into them to do anything.
Love it.
And but one thing you see now is we're back to this 2-layer design where you can unscrew the bottom and you can repair everything inside of it, right? And so. Whether it's a Snapdragon-based computer
that's
or
framework. That's the framework.
Modern. But everyone's not. They're not doing the modular thing, but they're doing the back is 4 or 5 screws, pops right off, doesn't require tools.
Nice.
There's no glue to get through or anything.
Nice.
Nicely labeled. You know what's what. You can replace everything. Who's
doing that?
Everyone.
Really?
I mean, everyone. Yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
Well, that's
cool. The latest Surface machines that have little notes inside them.
I know they're like nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's great. That's really good news.
They have they have symbols for the exact tools you need for this thing, and the part number. It's a QR code. You know.
Oh, that's
so
great.
The only thing on a Snapdragon PC you can't replace is the RAM, but the rest of it
because that's on the die.
You could replace the whole system board, but you could do the whole thing.
So this has a 512 gig hard drive. If I wanted to put a 2 terabyte in that, I could actually do that.
So that's I don't know that exact.
We'll see.
Box,
I'll let you know.
It's just a box.
That'll be the first thing.
Absolutely, you can. Right. It's probably just on an M2 SSD, so you can do whatever you want.
Right. Cool. Yep. And I won't be running Fortnite on it. I understand. That's okay.
Yep, that's the Achilles heel of this system.
That's cool, man.
Fortniteless.
I'm not buying it for a gaming machine.
By the way, I did very early compatibility tests with all the hardware and software I had. And the only software I ever found that didn't work at all was Google Drive. I found this very early on.
That's weird.
And every single time I read an article about this system, because everyone seems to be going out of their ways to explain why you don't want it, they always cite Google Drive. And I'm like, I felt like I was the only Google Drive user in the world, but I guess everyone's using it now because this has become like a big problem in the PC space.
Wow.
So can you use Google Docs? You just can't sync with Google
that's all
Drive.
browser-based stuff. What you can't do is do the file system sync. Okay. But it works with OneDrive. I believe it works. I haven't tested this, but I believe it works with Dropbox.
I still have unused 2 terabytes of OneDrive just lying around.
Yeah, we all do. I mean, that's somewhere, right?
I don't mind using that. Yep. It's funny, every time I log into OneDrive on a PC, it shows me the same 4 pictures I uploaded like 10 years ago.
Yeah, same thing, right? I'll see like an article from like 1997. I'm like, what is this? IIS2? What is that? Or whatever.
Oh, well.
Every so often I stumble across some old file store in the cloud of one kind or another. It was just ancient stuff. And you're like,
oh, this is... Yeah, part of my digital decluttering was the 1,000,001 versions of all the temporary backups I dragged to my NAS. It's like my 2-file folder that has all the stuff I wanted to file away but never did, and they're all, or like the desktop from some random install in a laptop or something. Like I had not 1 million, but I had hundreds and hundreds of those things. Just sitting there taking up space.
Yep. Everywhere.
Super important stuff. Had to save it. I'm a pack rat. Okay.
So Windows 11 23H2 Wait a minute.
So every year
What year is this?
Microsoft comes out. What's that?
This is 2024, right?
No, I know. That's why this is confusing. That's why I was leading this way. So every year Microsoft, this is what I was going to say. Microsoft will release this new version of Windows 11 now. For a while it was, Windows 10, obviously.
Right.
And then
every quarter.
X number of months later, could be anywhere from 3 to 9 months later. This, I think, might be the latest date they did it. Microsoft will announce, and announce is a strong word. They quietly reveal on the I think it's the Microsoft Learn or Microsoft Support website, where they have like the release information status for every version of Windows. They put a little update in there that says, this version of Windows, the last one we released, is now broadly available. And every year they do it, I write a story just to confuse the hell out of everybody because it's crazy. They're like, what does that mean? This thing has been out since October. Plus, you might recall, I just mentioned this, right? Windows 11 version 23H2 is just an enablement package. It's Windows 11 version 22H2 with just a couple of digit shifts on the version number. There's no difference. And they did that for whatever reasons they did that. But the nice thing about that from a customer perspective is it's the same code base. So it didn't bring with it any compatibility issues that were unique to this version. It's just the version that's from a year ago that's been updated every month since. And here it is again. And yet it took them 9 months to get to 9 months.
Like they forgot 9 months.
And this is goofy to me because what this means is with every version of Windows, there are certain things that will block your machine from getting the upgrade automatically, right? Some of those things are compatibility related, which for this version shouldn't have been a big deal for the aforementioned reason. But sometimes it could be like a hardware device you have that just isn't going to work ever or whatever. Some people have actually, like, you unplug a printer or something or a USB device, and then you're like, oh, here's the upgrade. Like it's this thing that was holding you back.
Right.
But, and this, what broad availability means is that all of the blockers that were known have been resolved. Yeah. So unless your computer is just not, compatible, you will be offered this now.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard from people who say that's not the case, but we don't know there could be some system component, something we don't really know for sure. Also, if you're on Windows 10, you get like these eligible PC update notices because they want you to use 11.
Yep.
If you actually say yes to that now, you will get version 23H2.
Yeah.
If your computer.
That was what I really think is that this means this is the base version now because they are about to drop 22H2 support.
Yep. That's right. Yeah, which, again, because 23H2 is 23H2, it's like, are they? Yeah. I mean, are they dropping it? It's okay.
I'm still hanging on to Win 10 on my really wide screen machines because I want that taskbar on the left side, and you can't do that with Windows 11.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. Don't worry, they'll release that as a random cumulative update on a Thursday some year, some month rather, without testing it.
Just to move the few people like me who are wearing it.
I mean, how long did it take them to fix like the right click thing for Task Manager or
months?
It's just the way they do things now. It's fun. I'm trying to believe. So,
all right. So how many Snapdragon machines have you gotten now?
I have 4.
4? Okay. And the new one is the T14.
Yep. Yeah. The commonalities between these machines is very interesting to me. And I think speaks to the kind of limitations that PC makers did not want back when Windows RT was the thing. And it was one of several reasons where they kind of backed off from RT. Not the only reason, but I think the world has changed a bit. So I guess there are 2 ways to look at that. On the one hand, all the major PC makers are on board. Lenovo, HP, I think Dell, I might be missing one, have all released like at least 2 models, 2 different products, right? Okay, that's great. This is better than it's ever been. But I will say since that date, June 18th, when these things first came out, I've gotten 9 laptop review requests from Lenovo alone, and 8 of them were for x64 PCs, and all but 1 were for Intel-based PCs. And that's the reality of our market that not you, Rich, I mean, that one needs to remember. I know you know this, but and the reason I say that is because one of the other reasons that PC makers did not jump on RT, well, it was because Microsoft was doing Surface, but also because of Intel. Like Intel has these incentives that they provide to PC makers. It's one of the little factors that goes into whether or not they can be profitable selling any particular computers. And so part of the success of Snapdragon was Qualcomm waking up to the fact they had to do the same thing, And I don't have any insight into this, but my guess is that AMD maybe doesn't do that as much. And that explains why 1 out of every 10, maybe, or whatever it is, goes out with an AMD sticker on it. I have very limited experience with this, but in that limited experience, which I think we can call anecdotal, the AMD stuff has been much better than the Intel stuff in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with you there. And part of it is their design strategy is I think better thought through.
I have this little 13-inch laptop I got from Lenovo that has integral. They call it an APU, or it's an integrated AMD graphics processor with just a standard level, whatever Ryzen processor, and this thing plays video games. Great. Right. Now it runs like a jet engine, but it would, right? Yeah. But it can play video games. It's the computer I'm now downloading Call of Duty to. I know it's going to be fun. And that's fascinating to me. Intel's getting there. The Media Lake stuff a little bit, and then I think with the improvements that they're talking 2x on graphics on the next one for what do you call it, Lunar Lake. They're going to get there too, right? That's going to transform PCs. I think that's very exciting. But they're big. Intel's big, and they have lots of marketing dollars, and they have lots of incentives that they hand out.
Yeah, the question is, can they actually make a good chipset? That's the
no, they can't. I mean, that's the problem fundamentally. Well, we'll see. I don't. You don't count them out, but
no, I never count them out. They've got enough money to keep making mistakes, right?
Yes, they do.
And
so I mean, these things all tie in together. I mean. So anyway, you asked about the Snapdragon stuff. I mean, they all do have their little differentiators. The Surface laptop that I just reviewed, which is the one I paid for with my own money, is fantastic, but it's also the only one that I have that has that big screen, which is what I really want. I want that 15 whatever inch screen.
What about the processor? Have you got any of the high-end processors? Because I thought a lot of the sample units were the base processor.
I don't recall on the ThinkPad probably, but except for the Surface, they're all that base X Elite processor. Mm-hmm. The Surface has the next one up. And the difference between that and the base processor is this dual core boost. Right. So for intense workloads, 2 of the 12 cores can go from whatever the base clock speed is, 3.8 or whatever, up to, I think it's 4.3 gigahertz, whatever.
Something like that, yeah. For a while.
Sustained. And I have noticed zero impact from that. Now, I actually ran some video encoding tests before I wrote that review, just in case there was something in there. Mm-hmm. There is not.
Well, I mean, the other part would be just instrumenting well enough to know, did it kick into boost mode? How do you even tell?
How do you even, how would I know? I don't know. So I've not.
Much less making sure that the workload ends up on the right processor in the first flipping place.
This is not isolated. In fact, let me think about that. Yeah, this is not isolated to Qualcomm processors, but I've actually seen a bunch of stuff because I've done a bunch of this recently where for some reason, and this is opposite of logic and science, it runs this encoding test faster on battery than it does on power. What? That's not even possible. But I know, but that's what it does. That's pretty funny. I don't know what to tell you.
That might just be a bug, nothing more complicated than that, right?
It's hard to say. I don't know. So anyway, Surface laptop's fantastic. It does not have presence sensing, which honestly in a premium laptop.
This is not a Snapdragon machine. This is an Intel.
No, this is Snapdragon.
Oh, it's Snapdragon. Okay.
Yeah.
Why doesn't it
no
have
fingerprint reader?
What?
I know presence sensing's big. So the one consistent thing I've seen across every single one of these computers, and this is why I wanted to talk about the HP laptop, every one of them, every single time, and it doesn't matter if it's like an hour, 5 hours the next morning, or 3 days later because I've been doing other things and I haven't touched it. When you open the lid to one of those computers, Snapdragon X based, it comes on that second.
Right.
Every time. That is never not
very much not over this.
No, because
you're still posting pictures of this.
He loves it.
Yeah. There's still pictures on Instagram of a half of a machine
like a little
girl.
Every morning, my wife goes in, she makes coffee. I sit down in front of one of the laptops, I open it, and I go, it's like every single time. So I love that. That's what the Mac does, by the way.
Yeah, the Mac does that. You get used to it.
So today, I opened the MacBook Air for the first time in several days because I saw that there was a new beta version out. Same thing. Comes right on. That's that. I don't know what to call that. Consistency, reliability, performance, whatever it is. Instant on. That's what I wanted. That is what all of these things deliver, right? The ThinkPad is the first to include an integrated fingerprint reader, by the way. So we finally have one of those. But they're all very consistent, and most of them are that lower end processor without the dual core boost, which again, to date, in my experience, I've not noticed it, I think is the way to say it. I don't know if it's doing something on the back end or whatever. Also, this laptop has identical battery life to the Yoga, which is very interesting because different size screens, different types of screens, different size batteries. 10.5 hours I averaged on this thing. Real world, like not benchmarks. I mean, like actually using it. 10.5 hours observed. So that's good stuff. The one thing I'm trying to figure out how to write about this. This just came up about Intel and review laptops and whatever. Most of them are Intel based, right? So I have a bunch of Lenovo laptops and some HP stuff in house right now. And last week, 2 weeks ago, it feels like a million years ago, I was in New York for an HP thing, right? And at the time I did it for Mary Jo's apartment, I guess it was 2 weeks ago. And they talked about this new AI computer, which is based on an upcoming AMD chip. And then I had a reviewer's workshop for a Intel Meteor Lake Orphan Generation HP EliteBook 1040, which I believe is the laptop that Leo had. And it is in its own way, it's beautiful. This has always been my favorite keyboard on any portable computer well, not always, but for a long time. And this gen, different. The body's a little different. The keyboard is very different looking, although it actually feels the same. Thank God, I was worried about that. But they're not going to say this, right? HP, Lenovo, those companies, they get incentives from Intel. They're not going to crap on Intel, right?
No.
But they are doing work, and they always have, behind the scenes to make these computers more reliable, right? When SurfaceGate happened, when the Surface computers were hot bagging, Surface Pro 4 and Surface Book 1, Microsoft lashed out publicly at Intel. And my buddies at PC makers were telling me, like, these guys have no idea what they're doing. This is how it works. You know, we ship the updates. This is on us, you know? And we'll get to the Intel thing that just happened because this is an interesting story. But
I remember I remember that whole thing. Yeah.
That was the big one I can think of where it kind of came out public, like,
whoops.
Yeah, like, and Microsoft lashed out at Intel in ways that I don't think people understand. They actually obsoleted a couple of generations of Intel processors. I think just like punitively.
Yeah, it's
dropping support for Windows 10 just as a little FU to Intel, like a little pushback, you know?
I don't know if it's widely known. You guys know this, that Microsoft and Intel, it is a love-hate thing, right? There's always been that way.
No, this is, I've written so much, but have not published a lot of it yet about this very thing, because like dating back to when Dave Cutler and then Microsoft picked AMD's x64 extensions for x86.
Yeah.
And Intel had to see the AMD name in the source code all the time. It drove them insane.
Yeah. Cutler did Windows on Windows.
They've been laser focused on any architectural decisions that Microsoft makes with regards to processors, right? And so every single time ARM has come up, Windows RT, the first reveal in January 2011, Windows 10 on ARM, and now Windows 11 on ARM with Snapdragon X, what you see is the same thing every time. Intel trying to ruin the party, right? By coming out and saying, hey, don't forget about us, don't forget about us, don't forget about us, you know? Intel made sure that their garbage Atom SoC was part of the initial Windows on ARM, the RT announcement, because that's how powerful they are. They're like, we're not going to not be part of the story, you know? And they were not part of that story, but this is, you know, Intel,
talk about builds.
They throw their weight around,
you know?
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting off track here, but so this HP computer is very interesting because I saw it and I was like, oh man, I'm like, Meteor Lake, I've had all these problems with it. But then they start talking about these things they did. Now, again, they're not crapping on Intel. They don't say it that way at all, but they're like, look, you know, typically with these computers, what happens is you open the lid and nothing happens. You press the power button, it comes out of hibernation, takes a little while and it turns on. The part they're not saying is that's not what always happens because it's super unreliable, but leaving that aside, they said we put these sensors in the machine where it can detect things beyond just presence sensing. It does presence sensing, but it also does things like it detects when you take it out of a bag. It detects you coming up, it detects movement when it's not open, right? And the idea is that what this thing does is it works around the problems with this architecture by putting it into this deep sleep, but then having this thing running so that it's looking for an event, and then it comes up to the normal sleep state, which is the thing that happens right after you close the lid. So that if you do open the lid, you get this like sort of instant on experience, right? That's the theory. So I had this thing for about 2 weeks. Well, I guess it's 2 weeks now, so we'll call it 10 days. This never worked. Like it never worked. And I was like, oh man, I'm like, what am I going to write about this? They were talking about what a great workaround this was, And then over the weekend, one day I opened the lid and it came right on. And I was like, wait a minute, wait. Did that just happen? I was like, is this a Snapdragon computer? And ever since then, it has actually been working. So it's like this kind of old school architecture, and HP did what PC makers do. They kind of work around the problems. And it's too bad because Meteor Lake's on the way out, but I think they kind of figured it out. It's kind of like a little. So anyway, that the HP Elite Book 1040, I think it's the one Leo had. It's Meteor Lake based.
Yeah, it was instant on. I didn't realize that was so hard to do.
It's gray, but it's almost white in certain light. It's kind of
it's pretty
cool looking machine.
Yeah.
It's neat. Yeah. So
I didn't even.
Anyway,
this is where
trying.
I'm at a disadvantage because I don't use that many Windows machines. I just thought, I didn't think it was anything special.
Right.
But it is.
I had gotten the HP ZBook Firefly, which is like the portable workstation version of that exact laptop. But it does not include those things I just described, right? So it doesn't have the sensors, it doesn't have the software. And that's the computer where they actually fixed it with BIOS updates or firmware updates. But for the first couple of weeks, I was having horrible reliability problems. That was the one where I opened it up one day and the battery had gone down to 0. It was off. It was just dead. Somehow it had drained overnight. And when I looked at the battery report later, there was an hour between, I think, 1 and 2 p.m. where it lost 67% of power just sitting there on the desk with the lid closed. It's like, yikes.
What kicked in?
I don't know. I never saw anything. I looked, I didn't see any. I couldn't.
Something.
That's the hot bag problem too, right? It's just not sleeping well. It's also the Leo old man problem.
Well, you know what though? This is the problem is when you experience that once, hopefully, but maybe twice, whatever, you never trust it again, right? And so for years, ever since Surface Book 4, if I go to the airport, I turn that computer off every time without even thinking about it. And
it becomes reflex.
When I took the Mac to I guess Mexico, probably back in February, March, whenever that was, I made a point of like, you're gonna suck this up because just put it in the bag and don't worry about it. And I did. And I opened it on the plane. It came right up. It was 99% battery. I was like, nice. So the Snapdragon X processors will basically do the same thing. You actually do lose 1 to 3% overnight. It's not perfect, but so far that instant on thing now, perfect. Like that's.
I never switch off my Macs. It's so funny.
Yeah, you don't think about it.
You don't think
You're
about
trained.
It. Yeah,
before.
But there is an advantage to making the whole stack. Well, I guess Microsoft sort of has that advantage.
It's a double-edged sword, right? I mean, you're beholden to the limitations that company decides are proper for the platform and all that stuff. But
Microsoft fixes now, but they only learned to make laptops with those early versions of the Surface and so forth. Like with the problem you were describing with the chipset.
That was early days. You're right. Yeah.
Because they just didn't know, right? So they were not pro hardware.
They were not savvy with and
what the
for the PC makers
are.
that honestly they actually really appreciated this happening because they were like, we've been kind of telling you this for years and you weren't paying attention.
See,
but now,
we've been doing this all along.
I mean, well, now Microsoft knows, right? So
now the big guy yelled.
Yeah.
All right.
So I ever since starting with the 12th generation Intel Core processors, I've noted various problems with these chips, right? This is when Intel shifted from, so 8th generation was when they went to a base of dual core for their core processors, right? Quad core, I guess. And but it was the same basic architecture they had for several years. And then starting with the 12th gen, they started using what they call a hybrid architecture, right? And this was the beginning of their response to ARM. So from 12 and 13 are very, very similar. 14 probably is as well, but before 14 came out is when they did Meteor Lake. Meteor Lake is the first gen Core Ultra. And that was a radical change, and one that, to my experience, has proven to be very unreliable. And now with Arrow Lake and Lunar Lake, the second gen Core Ultra, we're seeing yet another radical change. So there are 3 or 4 radical changes in there, but the big thing I saw with 12 and 13th gen was this problem with the USB docks, which I talked about. I was out in Mexico and I was trying to connect. It was actually using it for this podcast. And I like, what's going on with these computers? I had an 11th gen, actually ZBook, I think it was, that I had to use for the podcast on that trip because the 12, 13, whatever it was at the time, I guess 12, just would not work. They were broken, you know. With Meteor Lake, I've seen all the power management problems, like the thing I just described. Battery life is down horrifically, model over model. And to me, like, this thing is just broken. But more recently, other sites, I guess, or I don't know who was complaining. People have been complaining, I guess, for a couple of years now that the 13th and 14th gen, which I've not tried. So 14th is the non-ultra chips they announced probably at CS or whatever, essentially the same as 13. There's the desktop version of the chips. There's some problem everyone is experiencing where these things are physically basically melting internally and won't work anymore, right? There's some kind of, they're overheating, right? And sometimes it's because people are overclocking
is it
them.
a fuse that's breaking? Like they're saving themselves, or they're actually destroyed?
So what Intel says is that, so they are physically destroyed. That's true. So Intel is actually replacing all those for free, no questions asked, reportedly, according to them. But Intel examined this. They actually came out with a public statement. This is somewhat
unusual,
unprecedented. It's just, I mean, it may not be literally, but it is. According to them, it is let me see if I can find the exact quote. There's an elevated operating voltage stemming from a microcode algorithm that resulted in the incorrect voltage request to the processors, causing them to run hot, causing instability problems if you overclock it enough, causing a physical defect where it cannot be fixed physically, like you have to actually return it. And so they're replacing those. They're issuing a microcode update. Now, this is the thing that actually does happen that we don't really hear a lot about. So when there were problems with Intel processors and probably AMD, they released these microcode updates. You don't go to Intel, support.intel.com or something and like download them. You get them from your PC maker or you get them from Windows Update. And so they have described this. They've talked about it. This is something I don't usually do, but they're like, this is how you're going to get it. And they claim, although some people say otherwise, that the mobile versions of those processors are fine. They don't have this same exact problem, but they're actually going to issue from the mothership like an update for these chips.
Wow.
And I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Of course it happens. They must release microcode updates of whatever kind fairly regularly.
That was Meltdown Inspector, was that, right?
Yeah, there you go. Okay, great. Actually, there you go. That's why it's not unprecedented. That was a thing.
That is your precedent.
There you go. Yep. So it's interesting they chose to go public with this. Like somehow the pushback on this issue was so vocal.
Well,
meanwhile, I'm over here like USB hubs. Nobody cares.
But from the Intel perspective, it's like if you can get people to install this patch, you won't have to replace their broken machines. Like that'll save you money.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Right.
Yeah. Remember in the early days,
it's the right thing to do. I'm not dumping on them. It's is it a CrowdStrike level problem? It's probably a similar lack of quality control, honestly. I mean, but
you don't automatically know why a machine fails either. So it's a different thing. And it's not like all of them failed at the same time on Friday.
This is part of the problem. So when we talk about like hot bagging or anything else with Windows, if you open a laptop, screen doesn't come on, you hit the power button, nothing happens, whatever it is, or you have like a random experience every single day. I don't know how everyone operates, but for me, I blame myself a lot. Maybe I did something. I don't know. Maybe, or you just get into that kind of mindless, computers.
Yeah, whatever.
Well, that's why it was discovered by a system integrator, not an individual, right?
Okay.
Because they had a lot of. Greg M in our YouTube chat says it was April, a system integrator who discovered it, and Intel was forced to.
Yeah, like if you had a customer who was overclocking a gaming PC and they were having reliability issues, your response at any point along the chain of support would be like, yeah, obviously you are. Well, look at what you're doing. You're doing something crazy. Like maybe tune it down a little bit, But I guess in this particular case, it didn't actually matter if you overclocked or not. It did matter to the degree the damage would be done, I guess. But it was a pretty but yeah, it's like, so someone is also like, because Gaming Nexus tried to shame them. And it's like, who's Gaming Nexus? Who cares? I think the reason they responded was because it was real. Yeah. And it was actually widespread.
Yeah, but Gaming Nexus is a pretty big YouTube channel. You and I are old school. We don't understand the power of these YouTube influencers. And they carry a lot of weight.
My whole look, I'm glad they responded. They did the right thing. It's good. Mm-hmm. It's all good. And there's no real word here, but what you hear from kind of back channels is this is not going to impact the performance of the computer, which is an important thing in the wake of Spectre and Meltdown, right? That the horrific fix required to make these things work correctly is
15% hit across the board. What made Spectre and Meltdown important was it was a vulnerability that would affect the cloud. That there was the possibility of an adjacent process inside of a machine having a view into another process's data set. It never happened, but it was a possibility. And so, if you upset Satya, wow, you really upset someone, haven't you?
So this is interesting to me because anytime I think about Intel and chip reliability issues, which I'd say I think about just about every day, I always think back to Surface Gate and Microsoft's sort of immature pounding on the edge of the crib response, and it was like guys from HP and Lenovo, wherever else, are like, that's actually on you. That happens. It's like you did that.
Oh, it was just a blogger. We don't have to pay any attention to that. Just some bloggers. And this is what happens now. The YouTube, especially in the PC marketplace, these big YouTube channels, they drive a lot of sales.
So that's interesting. I'm always rereading parts of that Steven Sinofsky book, and there's the part I'm in now is the time between the developer preview and the consumer preview of Windows 8 and how everything shifted dramatically negatively in that time frame. He quotes an article I wrote at such length I don't know how I didn't get royalties from his book, but there's an
homage, Paul. That's an homage.
Once you get a page and a half, don't you qualify?
Oh, it's 3 pages plus.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. There's a term in there. It's weird. I don't remember seeing this before, but I went back and reread this very carefully. Obviously, enthusiasts are whatever they are. Then they claim to represent some group of people. They're influential in their own way. They help other people to computers, so it's important that you adhere to their demands. But there's a term. I guess this came out of that one of the Die Hard movies where there was the Justin Long computer nerd guy who had Kevin Smith in the back room, who was the real computer super nerd, and he was in the basement. And Microsoft adopted the term "the basement" to refer to these enthusiasts who maybe didn't have as much sway as they thought they did, kind of a thing. Maybe they weren't so representative of the wider world. He's wrong, by the way. He's completely wrong, not because of influence or anything like that, but the reason he brought this up is that Microsoft built muscle memory stuff into Windows 8 so that it worked like Windows 7, right? So in other words, if you were used to hit start button, type, it would work on Windows 8, right? And to Microsoft's engineering mind, that was enough. But the problem wasn't that. The problem was that normal people, like my wife or my friend Chris, who I always held up at the time, would get a new computer with Windows 8 on it and then say, how do I use this thing? Because they didn't have muscle memory for keyboard shortcuts.
Right.
They clicked on things, and those things were not there anymore.
The affordances.
And my wife, who's smarter than I am, I watch her on a plane or next to me sometimes on the couch, and when she has to save a document, she moves the mouse up to the thing and clicks a button. And I'm like, I've said to her a million times, like, do you not have autosave on for one thing, but do you not use I'll say, what do you use the keyboard shortcut for something? She's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And this is the central disconnect, between like an engineering mind and like a normal person. And anyway, that's why Windows 8 sucked. So
can't believe you brought up Live Free or Die Hard. That's hilarious.
I brought it up because it was in the book. I remember this vaguely, but it didn't make much of an impact on me.
You know what? Whenever I listen to you, Paul, I think, this guy needs therapy.
Yeah, you should think that. You're right. Or just drugs, Yeah.
No, well, I got a solution that you don't even have to get off your couch. I am being silly. Truth is, therapy is the best thing anybody could do.
But you, Paul, especially.
You, Paul, more than anyone. Yeah.
That's the level set it.
No, I go to a therapist every week. I love him and I love it. And it's such a valuable tool for me to kind of set goals, to set expectations. This episode brought to you by a company we've talked about before called BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, BetterHelp. What do you do when you get caught up wishing your life looked like someone else's? This happens all the time, right? You go on Instagram and you go, they're having so much fun and I'm not. Comparing yourself to others is the thief of joy. It really is. It's easy to envy other people's lives. It might look like they have it all together on Instagram. Whenever I look at Paul's sushi pictures from Mexico City, I go, why am I not living in Mexico City? In reality, Paul doesn't have it all together any more than anybody else does.
Hey. That's true.
No, but it's true. You look at honestly, especially for young people who may not yet understand this. My daughter's 32. I tell her this all the time. Stop comparing your life. So one way to say it is stop comparing your insides to somebody else's outsides, right? You don't know what's going on up there. Therapy can help you focus and give you, by the way, a responsible person, a smart person who with a deep understanding who can explain to you this isn't you shouldn't compare yourself to these people. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have. So you can start living your best life and stop comparing your insides to their outsides. If you're thinking about starting therapy, this is, one of the barriers, of course, is cost and ease of access. But BetterHelp is a great solution. You should give it a try because it's entirely online. I go to a therapist in person. My son uses one on Zoom. I said, on Zoom? He said, is the therapist not in town? No, she's in town. She said, I prefer it this way. It's easier. I think a younger generation is comfortable with that. So because it's entirely online, it's convenient, it's flexible. You can arrange it to your schedule. Go to betterhelp.com/windows. Fill out a brief questionnaire. They will match you with a licensed therapist. It's not just somebody off the street. It's a person who studied this, who's a licensed therapist in your state. You can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. By the way, I recommend that. Picking a therapist is like picking out a pair of shoes or something. You want to make sure it's a good fit. And it's every therapist understands this, It's no harm, no foul. You go, hey, thank you for your time. I don't think this is quite right for me. I'm going to try another person. BetterHelp makes that easy too. No charge to do that. Stop comparing yourself to other people. Start focusing on what matters to you. Make your life better with BetterHelp. Help is on the way. Visit betterhelp.com/windows. You'll get 10% off your first month. BETTER, better, help, HELP. betterhelp.com/windows. This is almost a public service announcement. I'm a believer. And sometimes people say, oh, there's a stigma or a shame. You do it online, no one will know but you and your therapist. betterhelp.com/windows. Paul?
Not to drag that one out, but you might have experienced this with your own children. No, that it being shameful to get self-help or whatever.
Isn't that ridiculous?
Mental health care. Yeah. That's a generational thing. Like my kids do not have this problem.
No, neither do mine. Yeah, you're right.
And I think the pandemic definitely brought that to light too. It's like, listen.
I remember having a conversation with my daughter about something that's private. It doesn't really matter, but it was just like, look, I said something like you would say from the 60s, like, no one has to know about this, honey. I can, and she's like, what do I care? I didn't do anything wrong.
Everybody I know is in therapy.
And you're like,
it's
right.
No big deal.
There you go. Yeah.
It's Tony Soprano, saying if anybody knows I'm going to therapy, I'm going to be whacked. It's not like that anymore, which is good.
Is those who are in therapy and those that should be in therapy? Is that what?
Yeah.
That's the choice.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for letting me interrupt. Let's go on to the insiders, shall we?
Thank you for letting me interrupt. There's a couple of minor updates from last week in the Insider program. They're updating the Microsoft Store that will now show suggested content you might be interested in the search box that appears as you start typing in the search box. So ads. So yeah, I mean, in case you thought there was some corner of Windows that Microsoft forgot about, don't worry, they're going to get there.
It'll be a pill-shaped box, right? Of course it will.
Yeah. Geez, I mean, is there just a kill me now button I could? So they're also testing different layouts for the start menu. I got to be honest, I don't understand what they're doing anymore.
And you think they do?
Yeah, fair enough. I mean,
just trying stuff.
I get that. Well, I guess my point is why, like they have the data that shows that most people don't launch apps this way. So anyone who's like spending the time to finally curate the layout and contents of their start menu,
it's summertime.
That person needs
those are interns.
Yeah, I mean, get outside, do something. That's stupid. So they're making all these little organizational changes to a UI that I don't think anybody actually uses that much.
Wait till September.
I
know. Those kids go back to school.
It's frustrating. And then I don't remember last week, one of the builds from one of the channels had added this ability to right click a tab and then duplicate it, right? So you can have a second tab with the same location. They've added that to Canary channel.
It's useful.
That was the only build released today.
Okay. There'll be more tomorrow.
Yep. Yeah. Tomorrow. Or Friday, if not, but yes. So yes, it's 24th. So exciting. I don't know. Just not that interesting, but yeah, we're in kind of a slow time. It is a summer.
Yeah. No, and the interns are running wild. I see pictures, they're having a good time.
That was the other thing I can't remember. The Windows 8 consumer preview, it had a bunch of apps pre-built in, and they were literally built by interns. Yep. And they promoted it. And I don't think they got the feedback they expected.
No.
Yeah.
Interns do good work.
They do, absolutely.
Look at Notepad.
More importantly, they often get to things nobody else is going to get to. And so when it gets traction, then it gets pulled into the team. Like, it is a way for a group of PMs, while not so many people are watching them because they're on vacation, to do some adventures with some young developers who want to try stuff. Right.
Yep.
And you can't
throw
tell
to someone
me
who has energy and
is going to be delighted to the fact that they did anything in Windows at all.
Wants to be challenged. I worked on my dad's operating system. It was fun.
Yeah.
Then I went back to the Mac I usually use.
Yeah. I tried to edit it on a Mac, but I couldn't do it.
Yeah. Right. I use WPF. So as we started the show, Laurent, the guy who writes news for me, texted me to say, hey, Bing just announced that they are adding generative search to their web, the web search. So this is the thing that Google's got into a lot of trouble for. I haven't had time to look at the story. I'm not sure how it has rolled out, or let's see. Let's go to,
this is what I was,
do something I haven't done in a few years and go to bing.com. And
this is one of the things I hate is AI everywhere. I was saying before the show started, I think I said, I did a normal Control F to search the page on a website, and AI popped up. And it's like, no, go away. It's like Clippy. I'm trying to do something here. You're not helping.
Yeah, you're in the way.
You're in the way.
That's it. That's an interesting point. I mean, depending on your search, when you say something like what day of the week was June 1, 1966 or something, there's an answer, right? So putting that right up there, you don't really need search results. That's the right approach. But a lot of these generative AI search results are just, what are they, like summaries of content that may or may not be high quality. And because it's summarizing from multiple places, it makes mistakes. I don't know.
So do humans, though, to be fair.
Right. But that's
our job.
Yes. The New York Times, I think, had an article, which is about 2 years too late, but it said something like, AI has a math problem. Like, yeah, we know that. We've known that forever.
Don't ask
that's
always arithmetic, that's for sure.
And that's why we sort of thought that Google would be kind of a leader here, because they already have that search result thing where if we want an answer, a discrete answer, it's that they got the world's information.
You can actually do a calculator in Google search. You can ask it to do math, and it does a great job.
Yeah. So, but saying that like AI can't do math is a simplistic way of saying it doesn't know the truth.
Right.
You said like humans
truth was not
mistakes.
A feature in an LLM. Come on.
Well, there's a quality ranking in search that hopefully bubbles up high quality sites or services, whatever, in response to a query. OpenAI, whatever, these big LLMs, it's just a garbage, like it's just like it's solving everything. And then it's like, well, let's see what the randomized version of all this crap looks like. It looks like randomized crap sometimes is what it looks like, All right. It's kind of an interesting problem.
No, it's a really interesting point because Google does accurate arithmetic right in the search bar.
Right in the search bar.
Because it's a computer program. You're asking it for a deterministic.
But if you ask Gemini, like, what's 3 + 3? Probably like broccoli.
But that's the difference.
I don't know. I don't know.
So I guess my point is that you're misusing it. That if you want math, use a calculator. I mean, it's not.
Yes.
And if you want kind of if you want a more generative answer, a fuzzy answer, if you will, then use an LLM, but understand it's a fuzzy answer. Fuzzy and arithmetic don't go together.
I'll try to find. I doubt I can find this during a show, but I found this great video several months ago about this exact topic. You're using it wrong. In other words, we have been trained.
Your expectations are wrong. That's the problem.
Well, also, like we tend to be very terse when we search, right? But we found that actually you want to be verbose when you interact with AI. Like the more detailed you are, the better the results usually.
Right kind of details, of course. But
yeah, it's kind of a Google works against the world's information and comes up with the answer, but AI works against the world's information and comes up with a gobbledygook somehow. So I guess this is an advance. But I think the impetus to put it in everything comes from, it's like a marketing problem. Like you can't be Google trying to present yourself as the AI leader and not have AI in your search. That's your premier product. You got to figure it out. It's garbage, so far, I think. And anyway, so Microsoft's added it. So if you like Bing for some reason, and I do not want to hear from you, but I know you do, some of you. There it is.
Yeah, I don't know.
They're doing it too.
Let's see.
I have some stuff in the, I think it's just a pick or an app pick or something about this. That's, actually both the things. My tip and app pick this week are both semi-related to this in kind of an interesting way because there are good use cases for generative AI. And this is not one of them. So, I want the definitive answer. When I Google something or whatever you want to say it, like I search the internet, I'm looking for an answer, right? I'm not looking to have a conversation about it. I certainly don't want to know everyone's opinion about it. I just want the answer. Some of these things are just literal facts. Can we just have a discussion about that? I mean, I don't
know. But again, facts are not essential to a large language model. It really doesn't even have the concept of that. A fact is just another word to be stochastically manipulated.
Saturday morning cartoon lyrics, like a little cartoon guy dancing around. A fact is just a fact. So I've been talking about Proton a lot lately. Proton bought a, I forgot the name of it, like an online note-taking tool earlier this year. They've turned it into a docs feature for their Proton Drive online service. This past week, they've announced something called Proton Scribe because everyone has to do this, right? So this is an AI writing assistant integrated. Actually, right now, it's integrated first into Proton Mail, but it will be coming to everything, I'm sure. So right now it's in Mail, I'm sorry, but that's a good place for it, right? So you want help proofreading or shortening or lengthening or whatever it might be in email, this is a good way to do it. And of course, Proton has that whole open source.
Do you use Proton Mail?
Privacy. I have a Proton Mail account. I don't use it for everything yet. I'm still kind of testing it. I think I mentioned last week I've been using Proton Pass, the password manager, which I love. And I hope I described it because I'm going to eventually write this up this way as the kind of the gateway drug to the Proton ecosystem.
Right.
But
they also have storage. They have, they're really building this whole array of
an
tools.
ecosystem, exactly.
Ecosystem, yeah. I'm curious. The only thing that stops me from using Proton Mail is in fact, you saw me do that when I just bought the Snapdragon PC. I have all my domains hosted at Fastmail, and I can make before the @ sign be anything. So every time
you're already doing something that's not Google or Microsoft, right?
Yeah,
or maybe
or
whatever. No, so you're in a better position than most people. I think this is.
Oh yeah, if you're moving from Gmail or Outlook, absolutely.
You're looking at you're like maybe I want some privacy.
Right.
maybe you've seen that thing one too many times where you search for something and you start getting ads. You're like, I think it's time for me to, maybe if I pay a little
I've
bit.
had a Proton Mail account forever. I still have a paid account.
I have too.
But
I just I don't use it.
Yeah. I mean, my other issue is it's a mistake to imply that email can ever be really secure. This whole notion that you can encrypt email. I mean, you can. And when it works, it works. It's secure.
The world,
but email is not. Yeah. It's not really intended to be secure. You should use Signal or something that is secure by design.
More intrinsically secure.
Yeah. You can. I mean, I use PGP all the time, and if everybody knows what they're doing, it's secure. But I think email should be thought of more as a more public medium.
Well, email is turning into what phone calls and now text have, thanks to all these spammers, which is something you just rely on less and less because it's mostly worthless.
It's hard to
90% of my email is like, I love your content. Here's a link to an article you wrote 11 years ago. I want to work with you. Could we we can promote this site? It's like, you obviously don't know anything about me. Like
Lisa was complaining about that this morning. She said there's been a huge influx of people wanting to write articles for our site. Which I'm sure both of you guys get.
A sponsored article I'd like to put up.
Because all RSS feeds are blog feeds, right? Like they don't know enough to know it's even a podcast.
Yeah. Well, they're right. We do have a website, but it's it's obviously mass emails. They don't know anything about us or the website. And Lisa responds to them.
Cindy that sent this.
I say, don't respond to them. You're just encouraging them.
Oh no, this is block Marcus spam. This is I don't
ever respond. And
God
of course, they're getting really annoying.
Person out there who wants to contribute to my site because I did not see it.
We don't accept contributors, so it's not an issue ever.
Yeah, right. Same.
But they'll send another one. I said, didn't you get my mail? I still want to do this. Are you still there? Hello.
I know.
I still not going to respond.
Put this to the top of your inbox.
No,
I know you're busy.
Go away.
Circling back on this.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's put a pin in you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just putting all my ducks in a row here.
I got a pin for you.
Okay.
So yes, your point well taken. Email is useless these days, pretty much.
Yeah,
and yet we still need it.
You have to have it.
You have to have it,
but it's you can't rely on it. Yep. Yeah, I mean, I look as an older guy. I mean, when things like Slack and Teams occurred, I kind of had a semi-visceral reaction to like chat-based communications with people. Like I hate that, but email might be worse. So, like honestly,
well, I think what happens is enshittification. It's Slack and email got bad, then Slack, and then Slack's getting bad, then Signal, and then Signal will get bad. I mean, you just have to stay one step ahead of the spam.
We're just moving, trying to keep ahead of the notification. Which is like trying to run a tsunami.
You're not going to win.
It's a failing strategy.
You're not going to win.
Unfortunately. There was a report in, I think, the Wall Street Journal that Amazon, I think it was over 4 years, lost something like $25 billion on its devices business. Because the point of selling these things for under the cost, I guess, or selling them very cheaply, which is sort of what Toys R Us used to do back in the day with diapers to get mothers with small kids into the store, was you would spend money on other things, right? And I guess that hasn't really worked out at all. And that's part of that big scale back that we know is happening. A money-losing hardware business is a perfect fit for a former Microsoft executive I know. And interestingly, he's running this business
but
now. So.
Amazon was doing layoffs to the Alexa group like 2 years ago, even before
they've been talking about this for
the LLM broke.
But they've been kind of walking around.
Well, and Google Assistant too. Like both was like within a couple of months of each other. Both the Alexa team and the Assist team said, "Yeah, these have never delivered on what we thought. We got to cut back. We spent too much."
The thing is, there is definitely a connection between the voice control stuff, which I think is the important bit. And then what happens on the back end is almost immaterial because now with these AI chatbot things, this use could be, I do know older people, especially who will talk to an Alexa device in their home or whatever, and they ask it about the weather, they ask it to tell stories or read it the news or whatever it is. Not AI, by the way, none of that, but there's a lot of good learning, I think, that went into that whole interface. And I think it could apply nicely to these chatbots. And these things are complementary, maybe is the way to say it. So there will be next gen Alexa something that, will have an AI component, maybe paid. Google's doing the same thing. Google rolled that business into another business. It's all part of Android now.
Yeah. But the timing of those layoffs was hilarious because they were months away from ChatGPT happening and the world going crazy when they did all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know what? This is just chasing bad money all over again, right? This would have continued.
And over in the Home Assistant world, when they made those announcements in 22, Home Assistant said, okay, we're going to do the year of voice. And this is the open source home automation tools where they're big on do smart homes without being dependent on the cloud at all, which none of the vendors want to do. Right. And so they help you identify what's making trips out, what is, and like doing everything locally. So they really worked hard on doing a local voice system, which by the way, does not work well. Like it's very hard.
Are you all HA?
Well, this is all the local AI stuff is kind of lousy, right? And this is what we've seen. I mean,
it's a battle. So I mean, the house I sold in the city was heavily dependent on HA, and the new owners have got much of it working, but not all of it. One of the pieces that isn't working, I've been helping.
That's one of the debates, by the way, is do you rip that stuff out before you give your host a house, or do you leave it in and pray they don't?
It's like having gold trim all over your house. Like 1% of people are going to love it, but you know, most people are going to be like, "Ooh."
Well, I did a bunch of things. Actually, I've been doing some videos about this. Like I transferred all the accounts related to the various services to an Outlook.com mail, so they
you
just
create
have the email
a dummy
address.
email. With the
I've done this from now on. The house should have its own email.
The house should have its own email. Yeah,
because it owns those things.
It should have its own Slack account, Richard. I don't know what you're doing.
I'm with you. Right now, I'm thinking more.
This is good. I want Richard's best practices on this because I have, all over the house, everything is smart. But I have a folder on my phone with 10 apps.
Yeah,
to control each thing individually.
I have never once triggered Siri on purpose, but that damn thing comes up every once in a while because it hears something I said, and most of my interactions with this thing are shut up.
If you say seriously, it will trigger Siri.
Off you go.
And I say you know me well enough to know I say that all the time.
I think you do. Yep. So HA is the universal way of solving this problem.
Those guys, I mean, it's a really great story because they, while being a volunteer open source sort of project, they lit up a thing called Nabu Casa a number of years ago. That was just a web proxy, but they charged $5 a month for it. And like 20,000 people signed up for it in the first month. Wow. So suddenly they had $100,000 in cash flow. It doesn't cost that much to run a web proxy.
Wow.
And they didn't lose their minds. Like what they did was they put it to work, employing all these people that were key to making this product great.
Nice.
And then started, as the numbers went, that was only the first month. The numbers are up from there.
Yeah. I just put it on HA on my Synology. And I think I'll sign up for Nabu Casa.
You sign up for Nabu Casa because it's all about the phone client, right?
Right.
And it's a great way to support the thing. But now that they've done is they've gone around and picked up various smart home entities like ESP Home and the like.
Right.
As basically acqui-hires where they give them a job. Would you like to work on ESP Home full time?
Yeah.
Right. And so they're now building stuff faster than Amazon, Google, Habitat, any of those competitors in the space. You can't keep up with HA now. So and at the same time, this mantra of
that might actually make sense retrospectively, I guess. Meaning maybe it doesn't make sense for a company at scale to try to do this stuff, but for a smaller business where they can actually make a go of this and make sense of it.
And sort of be that center point, right?
Well, and everything's siloed, right? Google doesn't really want you to use HomeKit. Nope. But so HA though works with Zigbee, Z-Wave, HomeKit. Everything.
Matter, you name it.
What I want to do is roll out of bed, say, good morning, house.
Yep, and off it goes.
And it turns on various lights, starts my coffee, opens the curtains, whatever.
That's what happens in my house.
Would say,
you can do that?
Good morning, Leo. It's going to be 55 degrees today.
Let me tell you what I found on the web about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
useless.
The bigger one is the low friction stuff, right? That the lights turn themselves on and off.
I have Lutron Cassetta everywhere.
Yeah, and which works great with HA, by the way.
Okay. Yeah. And then I just bought automated blinds.
Mm-hmm.
And
buy the ones that work with Lutron?
Supposedly they work with HomeKit and everything else, so we'll see. I think there's Zigbee. But it's a Tower of Babel. I mean, it's a mess. Crazy.
We can derail this show by miles. I avoid talking about HA most of the time because I am one of the obsessed, and I can go for days.
I'm glad to know, because I finally settled. I realized I got to do HA. I can't have. Yeah. I mean, I'll show you. This folder is everything.
Yeah. You're still going to have those apps. You're just not going to use
Home Connect, Atomi, Ring, Sonos, Lutron, MyQ, Virtual Keypad, which is the alarm company. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yep. HA will bring it together for you. So, She Who Must Be Obeyed has a dashboard in HA. It doesn't know what the different hardware stacks are. It doesn't need.
That's what I think I'll do, is dedicate a iPad or maybe this Google tablet, which I've never used.
I just walk up and open the shade, so I don't know.
I know. Honestly, all this stuff is automated, and I still flip the switch, open the shade.
Which is my version of saying, I listen to music on albums.
What do you know about that?
Screw the cloud.
Well, I put HA in my Synology, so that's the first step. Well, now there's a long journey, no doubt.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Paul. We'll go back to the.
No, it's okay.
And now back to your show, which is already in progress.
Yeah, which is what I can't remember what it is anymore. But
Panos Panay is running Amazon's. Is that who's in charge of it?
Yep.
Oh my God.
I know. It'd be funny if it wasn't true.
From the frying pan into the fire.
You probably thought I made that up, but it's true.
I thought you made it up.
See,
Honestly, God.
Their big annual event is in September, and I can't wait to see
I love those.
It should be amazing.
Those Amazon events are hysterical because they announce 44 products.
Yeah. This year they're only going to announce 3 or 7, I think. It's going to be small, but we'll see. We'll see.
That's when they announced that Astro robot.
Yep, which they just canceled.
Ages ago, I did, they have this day one project stuff where you have to sign up, and if you're lucky, you get an invitation to buy the thing. Oh. And I got invited to buy the sticky note printer for your Amazon Echo. And my whole idea was, look, Lisa, we can tell a word, we can tell Echo what's on the shopping list, add stuff, hey, Echo, add butter to my shopping list. It'll remember all that stuff. And then we say, print it out on the sticky note thing, and it puts little check boxes, the whole thing. And she never used it. So I got rid of it. The other day she said, hey, where's that sticky note printer? We could use that. I said, yeah, I know, but it's gone.
That's amazing.
This is the problem with home automation. It's just like your relatives who use a mouse their whole life. Yeah. They don't
home automation.
They have hidden affordances. They don't know where to go.
Before we had Wi-Fi as a standard, you could buy cards for your computer that would create a wireless network in your house that were completely incompatible with each other. And everyone had a different one. And that was
That's awesome.
You couldn't go there as another person and use it. It was just,
That's my Wi-Fi.
Ridiculous. Yep. Okay. Google has been working to jam something called Privacy Sandbox down our throats the past 4 or 5 years, whatever it's been. They've had delay it. This is an attempt to balance the needs of customers who want privacy from ads and advertisers who constitute 74% of Google's revenues and want tracking. So they've gotten a lot of pushback on this. They remember Flock was the first version of it. They dropped that pretty quick. They've been working on this other thing based on topics and some other things. I think site suggested ads and ad measurement. They actually rolled this thing out. It's in every time you set up Chrome, you'll see it. It does not say Privacy Sandbox, but you'll see something called Enhanced Ad Privacy, which is an oxymoron and or the opposite of that. But they finally, after many, many delays, they did not say we're killing it. What they did say is the thing it was supposed to replace that they were going to kill, third-party cookies, is now not going to be killed, which means they're killing it, right? And the reason they're doing it, guys, regulatory concerns.
Yeah.
Right? Antitrust regulators went to them and said, no, this is not what you say it is. The CMA from the UK, which I think we can agree, not necessarily the most competent of these regulators, raised no fewer than 39 concerns about Privacy Sandbox. Yeah.
But what's their concern? Privacy or that EU, or in this case, English companies would not be getting their advertising information as they expected? I think the complaints came from...
I don't know.
I think the complaints came from, at least this is what Steve Gibson said yesterday, from ad companies. It's like, you can't take away our third-party cookies, so we need those.
Oh, well, here's the thing. So third-party cookies are easy to block, right? Privacy Sandbox, if they got rid of third-party cookies, may have, although we've heard contra information about this, detune the capabilities of ad blockers and tracker blockers that are in browser extensions, right? Some browser makers, not all, not Microsoft, interestingly, kind of said, like, we're not doing this. We don't care what Google does. We're going to rip it out. They did the same thing with the flock-based thing that Google had done earlier. And then the day that Google announced this privacy badger, that, anti-tracking extension that I do recommend strongly, announced a new feature for their product. They're blocking Privacy Sandbox. So you don't even have to worry about configuring it correctly. You can use Chrome and they'll just turn it off for you. So the net result was what we wanted, which is this is terrible. So get rid of it. And now it's gone. And speaking of antitrust regulators, I think a week or two ago, we were talking about how Microsoft had reached a settlement with this trade group in Europe who represent cloud infrastructure companies in the EU. Not with all of it. I think this is the last major holdout was this company called OVH Cloud. OVH Cloud, a French-based cloud company.
Famously had a big data center fire in Germany a few years ago.
Okay. They reached a separate agreement with Microsoft. They've dropped their complaint with the European Union, and this is all tied to that exit fee stuff. They're going to make it easy / basically free for customers to exit Azure and go somewhere else if they want to. So that's really all they were asking for. Although I do like that this company OVH Cloud had a cute little dig at Microsoft at the end of their little announcement where they said, this agreement does lead to concrete progress for the entire European cloud ecosystem, but there's a crucial need for further action to effectively put an end to all anti-competitive practices implemented by hyperscalers in the EU cloud market, all of which, by the way, are American companies like Microsoft. So hyperscalers. Microsoft was like, yeah, wait, hey, that's us. So they reached an agreement, but it's not like these companies are best buddies or anything. Okay, where are we?
We are ready for the Melissa break.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that. That's an advertiser of ours that we've been doing ads for many years.
And a very fine one.
A fine company. A longtime supporter of this show and all of our shows. Let me tell you a little, this might be a good time for me to tell you a little bit about them. What do you say? Okay.
Sounds good.
Well, all right.
I think I shall.
Gather around, kids.
Gather around.
Pick up what you're putting down.
I want to tell you a little bit about Melissa. Melissa, the data quality expert since 1985. Whether you need the full white glove service or just the nuts and bolts, Melissa is the best for your enterprise, making your data crystal clear, clean as a whistle. Melissa has helped over 10,000 businesses worldwide harness accurate data with their industry-leading solutions, processing over, get this, 1 trillion with a T address, email, name, and phone records. Because it's global. It's everywhere. Take advantage of Melissa's data cleansing plugins for leading CRM applications. You use Salesforce? They got Clean Suite for Salesforce. They have it for Microsoft Dynamics CRM. They have it for Listware. They have Express Entry Desktop. G2, so you can, this is the beauty of that, is you don't even really, you use Melissa while you're in your Salesforce or your Dynamics CRM. It happens automatically. The bad data, whether it's from fumble-fingered customer service reps or customers, costs you money. Wrong address, wrong email. You're sending out stuff that nobody sees. Maybe delivering products to somewhere that doesn't exist. That's not good. Melissa fixes that. G2 continually recognizes Melissa, most recently as the leader of summer 2024. Yay! As well as a leader in small business as best ROI. Makes sense. Melissa's very affordable. They're very ROI conscious, and they're going to save you money almost right out of the box. They're a high performer, according to G2, momentum leader, fastest implementation, easiest admin, and the best meets requirements. Melissa's services use secure encryption, of course, for all file transfers, and an information security ecosystem built on the ISO 27001 framework. So you know it's secure. They also adhere to GDPR policies and maintain SOC 2 compliance. That's important because it's, this is your data. It's valuable to you. It's valuable to your customers. You want to make sure Melissa protects it. They do. They also now, and I think this is a great move, they offer transparent pricing for all services. So there's no guesswork. You can absolutely estimate your business budget. You'll know what it's going to cost up front. Get started today with 1,000 records cleaned for free. On-prem, in the cloud, API, any way you want it. Built into your CRM application. Try it out at melissa.com/twit. melissa.com/twit. We love these guys. melissa.com/twit. Thank you, Melissa, for supporting the very important job that these two wonderful fellows are doing here on Windows Weekly. And now back to the show. Antitrust. Oh, wait a minute. We did that one.
We did that.
Thank God. Stop it.
Don't be too excited, Leo, because what comes after antitrust is quarterly reporting.
Yeah, in my latest round of support for the European Commission, I'd like to mention 17 factors, I think.
Oh, Lord. So what,
I guess
Google,
we're
Alphabet?
Yeah, I'm only going to really highlight that one for the most part. Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, it's all coming. The next few weeks are going to be horrific for me. But Google's doing great, guys. I don't see a lot of it being AI, although
it's ads.
Otherwise,
Google's an ad company.
Yeah, so 74% of their revenues come from ads. But Google Cloud had $10 billion in revenues for the first time ever. Really? They've broken out this new group called Subscriptions, Platforms, and Devices, which used to be called Google Other, which is almost 10 billion in revenues.
You can't have 10 billion under other.
Yeah, I know. It just looks kind of weird. So yeah, they're doing fine. They did lose $2.3 billion, or I would say maybe invested $2.3 billion putting their AI infrastructure together. But Google's going to Google.
Yeah.
We don't really have to talk about this next one too much, but Netflix and Spotify both announced their earnings as well. And I don't want to talk about that in too much detail, other than I want to understand how these horrible, horrible companies are doing so well. Both profitable, double-digit everything. Both these products completely insurtificated. I think Netflix is the standard bearer for how awful you can be to your own customers. It's unbelievable. This is a company that has about 1 billion videos you can watch and no way to organize them whatsoever. You can make a queue. You cannot organize it in any meaningful way. They make it really difficult to do anything. They change the things that you see, like the topics, every day. They're in different positions. Sometimes your queue is at the top. Sometimes it's in the middle. Sometimes I'm not even sure it's there. It's just it depends on the Netflix gods. They keep changing all of their subscription tiers. They're trying to figure out things that make the most sense for them. To spending a lot of money on content from countries like India. I don't want to see sports games or WWE wrestling, live events. Guys, I just want to watch a freaking movie tonight. Like, can I just see a view of that? But no.
Their problem,
Spotify, right?
The reason Netflix does this anyway is to avoid churn, right? So their problem is you watch something and then if they don't have the next thing for you ready and go out the door, you lose them.
All right. So I probably don't have Netflix on this computer, but let me just check real quick now.
So a lot of it's crap, but it doesn't have to be.
If I were to look at whatever the screen is, my TV, my tablet, whatever it is, and let's pretend there are 20 icons for movies or TV shows, whatever, recommended. I have seen at least 8 of them, right? Yeah. There's no sense of, do not show me the thing I already saw.
Oh,
there's even no sense of, you can rate things like a thumbs up, thumbs down. I know it's not paying attention to this because it's constantly recommending the thing I said I did not like.
So that's crappy software. It's
so bad. It's just terrible.
Yeah.
And, we put up with this because they had a run there where they were like the new HBO, right? They did Narcos.
Right.
They had all these kind of really high quality shows. And you were like, oh my God, this is where everything's happening. And now it's like, 25 Bollywood shows that I have to watch apparently.
Running studios is expensive, man. I got a cheaper way.
No, I know. And they have to pay for it some way. And that way is.
I don't understand why you're confused that they're so profitable going so far down the insurtification process. Why do you think you insurtify? It's wildly profitable.
Cycle. Yeah, it's
not a virtuous cycle, but it is a profitable.
It's a non-virtuous cycle. Yeah, it's it could be. Spotify's the same problem. It confuses me that anyone would use Spotify. But yeah, anyway, I don't want to get off. I don't want to go too long on this one. It's just I just don't understand this. Game Pass would fall into this conversation as well if Game Pass actually made money and or was, whatever. But Game Pass was kind of a no-brainer for Xbox guys for a long time, a couple of years anyway. And then, Chris, we talked about this. In fact, we're going to talk about it again because last week, Microsoft announced, no, they didn't. Microsoft didn't announce. Microsoft posted a support document on the Xbox website that explained that they were raising the prices of all the Xbox Game Pass tiers and getting rid of the one that was the most popular and replacing it with one that does not have day one guarantees for new games because Call of Duty is expensive. We talked about this, right? I assume we talked about this. The FTC has used this as a chance to do what the FTC has been doing since they lost their case to block the acquisition.
Relitigate again.
To go back and say, see, and they are so wrong. And it bothers me so much because the truth is they did just kind of ruin it. They kind of did. Not because of the reason that the FTC says. The FTC, who, by the way, did not give a crap about Activision Blizzard employees even for 1 second until Microsoft decided to have layoffs and then pretended there was no way they weren't going to lay off 10,000 plus redundant new employees. Like that was one of their things. And then this thing, the problem with Game Pass to the FTC was not that they were going to make this subscription worse. It was that Microsoft was going to make Activision Blizzard games be exclusive to this service.
Right.
That was the complaint. They've done nothing. They've gone
literally
in the opposite
nothing.
direction. I talk about this every week. We have one little minor update to that, by the way, coming up in a second. But in 1 year, not 1. It's not even 1 year. 9 months, they've added one game to the service until today, by the way. But one game. They doubled that amount today. They've added a second game. It's not like they added 50 games. There's a whole stable of Activision Blizzard content sitting there that is not on the service, but silence. Anyway, so the FTC is terrible. But the thing that Microsoft has done is also terrible, and it is this insurtification thing. It absolutely is. This is like somebody woke up and realized that this deal was too good to be true, and they were like, "How can we ruin it?" And they're like, "Well, we can raise the price and we can make it worse." And they're like, "Yeah, that's a great. That worked great for Netflix. We should do that, and maybe it will be profitable now. I don't know." But yes, I am still very upset about this, and it stinks because
I'm wondering if Amy Hood decided once the deal had gone through to put that on the balance sheet for the Xbox team. It's like, okay, boys, pay off your $70 billion, get to work.
What they think it was going to go? I mean, Xbox, that is, like, I don't know. You like to think that there are competent people in this case who can do math, who can look at the finances of the various businesses like Call of Duty and whatever and say, okay, here's what needs to happen. I think I raised this before, but if not, it's maybe a point that as far as day and date games go, it's not 100% true, right? Like there are different versions of, I keep using this one example, but like Flight Simulator, like you as a Game Pass subscriber get the standard edition. You don't get the better editions, right? Yeah. I mean, you could have done the same thing with Activision, right? I mean, you could get Call of Duty single player. See, we did it. But if you want to play online, you got to buy it. There's all kinds of ways you could have solved this problem. There would have been a lot of complaining no matter what they did. But the one thing I think we all need to acknowledge, I assume most people have, is that, look, something was always going to happen. This was never going to make sense. You don't have to be too good at math to look at how much money Call of Duty just by itself generates every year, and then try to figure out what has to happen with Game Pass for that to make any sense. And it never does.
No, it never does.
Math just doesn't add up.
No, all these Class A games, you can't give that away. My best idea was you buy Game Pass so that you get it a week earlier than everybody else.
Yeah, right.
You still pay full price for it, but you get it first.
Yep.
Which, you know, there's a class of
discount.
player.
Like you do get like a 10, I think it's 10% discount. I mean, that's
no, I think they're missing. They're missing the ball on that one.
Yeah.
You know, people want to be first. That's what excites them.
Yeah, and these games like this are just like movies. That the headwind is not very great. Everything it's a like explosion right up and then whatever. Although,
I mean, the risk of that is if it's a dead game, a bunch of people who paid extra are going to find out it's a dead game first, and your second wave's not going to be
then
strong.
You're screwed. Yeah, then you lose.
So maybe it's only a 24-hour head start. But I'm telling you, there's a class of gamer that would pay for a 24-hour head start.
This may be, Leo mentioned Netflix and the kind of business model where what you don't want is someone coming, like there's a new season of Narcos, pretend or whatever, and a bunch of people join so they can watch it, and it all lands at once. They all watch it in 2 or 3 days, and then they cancel the service, right? Right. You don't want that, right? And Microsoft doesn't want that with Call of Duty. You don't want to have like this November announcement. You're like, oh my God, we just like tripled our Xbox Game Pass ranks. This is amazing. And then December comes, it's like, they're all like, I mean, you don't want that. So I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm just saying
no, and you do want, but you know what, you can educate your investor that there is a chunk of churn, right?
Yeah.
Either way, you know, those are 30% people that paid you for a month that wouldn't have otherwise, just to get that head start. Like you got to create.
Yeah. I don't know how fast Call of Duty drops off, and I don't know what the deal is with, you know, in-game purchases or DLC purchases, whatever that stuff is. I don't know, but this was such a lousy way to have done. It just feels malicious.
Yeah.
And speaking of malicious, as of today, we now have 2 Activision Blizzard games on Game Pass. The second is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. This was the game they released last October.
Right.
So it's the current game, and it will be the current game until late October when Black Ops 6 arrives, right? So, okay.
All right. That's last year's Series A game. And that would be the other argument is that all the games that are a year old are on Game Pass.
I would say, right. I mean, I feel like that this to me is acceptable. Like this is
the nostalgia mechanism is real, that we all know old games don't die. They just live in Game Pass.
I mean, people are playing it right. Probably millions of people right now. I mean, one of the neat things about Call of Duty now, which was not the case 3, 5, whatever years ago, is that it's cross-platform broadly, right?
Yeah.
It was a big deal to get PlayStation and Xbox gamers in the same games, and now we have PC gamers too.
Sure.
So you've got this much bigger audience that can play the game, so it's viable for longer, at least multiplayer. It's fine. But I'd like to know where the other 1,798 games are. And seriously, like we know the new Call of Duty is going to be on most of Game Pass. On
the money they wasted was Game Pass signups for Fallout after the TV show dropped. How many people wanted to play Fallout?
I know that was a perfect storm of getting it right.
Yeah,
and then having content so people could.
That was hundreds of millions of dollars. You know?
Yep.
And you could have even
such a win.
You could have even made a DLC around that show. And
I know
and
they should. They still should.
It's easy money. Yeah, it's still not too late. But
this is an awesome segue to the Halo TV thing. But I have to mention, because when today came, knowing they only made this announcement, I think yesterday or the day before. I got up, opened a laptop. I'm like, I'm going to download this thing, try it on this computer, and it was not there. So later in the day, Laurent texted me. He says, "Hey, it looks like this thing's out now." It just had some question about it. So I saw something I've never seen before, which is I opened the Xbox app and the game was there. It wasn't advertised, but it was down in the list. And I clicked on it and it said, click here to buy it in the Microsoft store for 20% off because you're a Game Pass subscriber. I'm like, you're giving me this thing for free. I pay for Game Pass Ultimate. That's one of the subscriptions. I'm like, what's going on? So I clicked on the link because it opened the Microsoft store. And when I went to the Microsoft store, same thing. It was just a link to buy it, not a link to just download it. Like usually it says install, right?
Right.
So I'm like, what's going on here? And so I started looking around, and this game was part of a bundle. And that bundle, so the bundle, there's the game Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. And then the bundle included a second game called Call of Duty. And Call of Duty was free. I could install that. And Call of Duty is required for this game, and then for Warzone, for the last game, for the next game that's coming in October. It's like the core engine or whatever.
It's like the kernel.
And I was like, oh, Microsoft, you are just perfect. And what I realized later on, I think, it's hard to tell because now I by downloading it. It's in my library, and now it might have changed the UI, but I think it was just a staging problem. I think if you go today and you have a subscription, you'll just see an install link, and it will just install right from the Xbox app like a normal, game or whatever. So I hope you have like 300 gigabytes free in your hard drive. It's a big title. And have fun. I'm expecting to be able, based on the download speeds, the size, I'll probably be playing it Saturday, maybe Sunday morning. It's gonna be a while. It's not going quick.
No, that fast.
Yeah, which is something the Microsoft Store is known for. Unfortunately, if this is the weight of these Activision Blizzard AAA games is going to break this system. Like they're going to have to fix this. They got
to improve the CDN.
And then this past week, I think it's Paramount Plus canceled the Halo TV series, right? Which is an example of how not to pull a Fallout. So
because it was not good.
It was not good. Yeah, I only watched a little bit of it. It was disappointing. I think the big freak out a lot of Halo fans had was that the guy took off his mask or whatever. But I have to say, the problem with it is what the Fallout guys got right, which is that I've never played a Fallout game, and my wife hasn't. Obviously, she's never played any game except for like Wordle or something. And like this was just entertaining. Like it was just good story, good, well told, a funny. Kind of a bizarre take on the apocalypse where everyone just kind of gleefully accepts the world as it is in its insane state. And
you're talking about Fallout, right? Not Halo.
Yeah. This was like, it made you want to play the game. It was like this. I'm like, this looks great.
This is an amazing world.
Yeah. Halo did not do that. And that's the thing. Him taking off his mask is like a problem for like the Halo pedantic types. But for this thing just had to work as a Battlestar Galactica style, science fiction series, right?
We're fighting
that
the
can be
bugs.
done well.
Yeah.
Look at Battlestar Galactica.
Sure.
There is a rich universe here, I think, that could be mined.
First, you got to get good writers, good actors, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It may get picked up, by the way. It's possible any day now, or someday in the future, you'll hear Netflix or Amazon or
that's the thing these days, isn't it?
No series is automatically gone.
Yeah. So it could happen. But
all you have to do, everybody sign the petition, bring back Master Chief.
Yeah.
Bring back Master.
But at the same time,
you don't hear a lot about that, though, do you? Not a lot of people saying,
but they're not doing the all up thing of you should be making a DLC for the game that's related to that. Like there's, you market on all the channels.
Okay, so this is, I also did not play the game. What's that Sony not Left to Die? Last of Us.
Last of Us, yeah.
So Last of Us was turned into a very successful series on, I think, Max.
Quite loyal to the game too.
And it's supposed to be like a lot of the same dialogue. It's the same basic story.
When you know it's a video game and you watch the show, you see that there's definitely scenes.
There's quests,
where it's like
things.
It's not like the Doom movie where you can see for a little while you can see him walking down the the hallway like this, but you know what? To me, so having never played the game, and my wife again having played nothing but Wordle. Both really love this TV series. Like, so the fact that it was faithful to a game did not make it better or worse. No. To me, it was just good. Like, it was just a good TV
series. It has to be good first.
It was a very good story-based game.
Yeah. I thought they did great. And it's coming back soon, I guess, and good and whatever.
They're filming it up here. They're filming it over on Vancouver Island.
Halo kind of evolved like a lot of the newer Star Wars shows where it's like, I want to like this,
Yeah.
And I start watching it. I'm like,
I really don't like this.
It's like, I don't know. I think
it might be dated too. I mean, the original Halo games a long time ago.
Yeah, sure was.
Out of Sync in our Discord says that they're taking too long to get to Halo.
Right.
Yeah.
They're really slow walking the arrival. And and I mean, it's 2 seasons in and they're almost there. So
now there's not going to be a third season.
Yeah. It's like that might have been a strategic error.
Yeah, I know.
Yep.
You know what? When the show's called Halo, you should arrive on the Halo.
Get to Halo.
You think it should
Episode
be about that?
1.
Yeah.
It should be a Halo.
It should be a Halo.
Why is this thing called Halo?
There was no Halo.
It's coming in season 3. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
We got this.
We're building it right now.
No, that's bad storytelling. It's just
honestly, that's the bottom line for any of these things. It has to succeed on its own merits.
I agree.
It's nice because you get people who love the IP to tune in for the first episode.
Yeah,
but it's no guarantee they're going to stick around.
No,
there's a bunch of really good Halo games you could have made fans.
Yeah, that's true.
You could have had And you can facilitate fan service while still bringing the newbies through.
You could also do what the best movies that are made out of books do, which is you tell the story well. It's so well done that it makes someone leaving the theater or whatever want to go buy the book so they can get the more complete story. And if the video game was done right, it would have been Halo Combat Evolved, would have been season 1, but it would have been, condensed because it has to be. And then if you really want to go play the game, it's there. It's on Game Pass, by the way. It's one of the few reasons to own it. So, yeah.
Let's take a break. We've got the back of the book just around the corner. That means your tips, your apps, your brown liquor of the week. All ahead with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell. You're watching Windows Weekly. We're, by the way, I love it that we have all these live listeners and viewers now because we're not only in the Club Twit Discord, but we're also on YouTube. YouTube.com/twit/live, Twitch.tv, X.com, Facebook, LinkedIn, Kick. We're everywhere. So I hope you watch live. The show is every Wednesday around 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC. Go to one of those sites. Usually it's /twit, but you can also search for Twit. On X, we're almost always right at the top there because there's not a lot of other live stuff going on. Should be pretty easy to find us and watch the show live. But don't forget to subscribe. And if you like what you see, if you like these two, join the club. Ad-free versions of the shows. You get lots of club extras. We've got an Inside Twit coming up on Friday. Lisa and I will explain the changes that are about to occur. All of that at twit.tv/clubtwit. And we thank our wonderful members for all their support. Our show today brought to you by 1Password. This is kind of a success story. You may remember for a long time we were doing ads for a company called Kolide, Kolide, and then we announced, Kolide's been acquired by 1Password. Well, now they've put that peanut butter and chocolate together to make one great treat. Do your end users, a question for anybody running an IT department, do your end users always work on company-owned devices? Do they always use your IT-approved apps? Of course not. Obviously not. So how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password now has the answer to that question: Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management is the first security solution that brings all those unmanaged devices and apps and identities under your control. It ensures every user credential is strong and protected, every device is known and healthy, and every app is visible. And this solves problems that MDM and IAM just cannot touch. It's a really great way to do this and to do it right. Here's to kind of give you maybe a metaphor for this. Your company and its security is kind of like a college campus. The quadrangle in the middle there where you got these beautiful ivy-covered brick buildings all around and very nice paved paths leading from one building to another, right? But if it's like any college quadrangle I've ever seen, there are also these shortcut paths worn through the grass because students aren't dumb. They're going to take the shortest point from building A to building B, and that path isn't paved. It's right across the grass. Well, those paths, the shortcut paths, are the unmanaged devices, the shadow IT apps, the non-employee identities in your company's network, contractors, people like that. Most security tools, they just cover the nice happy brick paths. But a lot of the security problems take place on the shortcuts, right? You got to solve this problem. And that's what 1Password's Extended Access Management does. It's security for the way we actually work today. You can, if you're using Okta, you can get it now. It works with Okta. Coming later this year to Google Workspace and Microsoft Entra. Find out more. Go to 1password.com/Windows Weekly. This is such a good idea. And one of the reasons I really am a fan is it makes your users part of the team, not your adversaries. Not the people you're saying, don't bring your phone on our network. Don't bring your laptop in from home. They become your partners in this. And honestly, it's a lot better if everybody's on the same team, right? 1PASSWORD, the number 1password.com/Windows Weekly. I know you know 1Password, and I hope from all their ads, you know Kolide. Now they're together, as 1Password extended access management. And this is one of, I think, our success stories. I like to talk about our success stories on here. All right, back of the book time. Let us start us with Paul Thurrott. And I think you've got let me see, I'll scroll up, tip and an app pick. Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, they both kind of a tip and an app pick in their own right, sort of, if that makes sense. So, and they're both sort of Copilot related. So in Windows 11, whatever version, Copilot was jammed down everyone's throats. It was a pain. It was a resizable pain, and then it became an app. So it's an app now, and you can, it's an app. And, who cares, right? I don't use the thing. I don't really care. But the thing that has impacted me is they replaced that right context menu key to the right of the spacebar on these new computers with a Copilot key.
Formerly the context menu key.
Yes. And oftentimes that means that new key is right next to the left arrow key, which I use the arrow keys a lot, kind of a keyboard shortcut guy. Mm-hmm. I'm also, messy. I don't, look.
You don't have the precisions of precision figures of a 20-year-old anymore.
Fat fingers. That's what it is.
There you go. So what that means to me is I launch Copilot possibly 10 to 20 times a day by mistake. And someone at Microsoft Telemetry was like, "Oh my God, this thing's going gangbusters! Turning this into an app was the smartest thing we ever did." But because I hit it by mistake, right? This happens to me all the time. Yeah. But here's the tip: it's an app. It's a web app, and that means you can hit Control+W to close it.
Oh,
so
nice.
As quickly as I can launch that thing by mistake by hitting that key, I can also type Control+W and get rid of it.
It's the other hand too, right? So you fat finger on the right hand and you clean it up on the left hand.
Yeah, cleaned it up with the more muscular finger of my left hand, I guess.
There you go.
Slightly tied to this, I'm still paying for Copilot Pro, which is the consumer version of Copilot from Microsoft 365, basically. I use it. I've tested it for writing type stuff. I just don't like that. But the thing I still use it for every day is I create images for my website with it, right? And one of the benefits of using the paid version, which sounds like a little thing, is it creates images in 16:9 wide format, right? The free version is square, which is garbage because a lot of times you can't, the important bits of the image can't be cropped out easily, whatever. So I pay for it. So Microsoft last week released Microsoft Designer, which we talked about. This is a web app that links into the Photos app now in Windows 11. And Microsoft Designer is kind of the brand they're using for the Copilot-based image generation capabilities of Microsoft's AI platform. But if you go to designer.microsoft.com, which is his website, among the things you can create with it aren't just the, Canva style designs, like you're going to make a newsletter or a whatever you do with these things, I don't know, a business card or something. You can generate images. And when you go to that link, it works just like Copilot. And it will create a choice of image aspect ratios, including square, wide, and portrait. And you do not have to pay for it to get it.
Nice.
So I'm going to experiment with this, and we'll see. Maybe I can stop
maybe
paying
switching
for this thing.
Yeah.
You do have to sign into Microsoft Designer with a Microsoft account, so that there's that.
And notice not an M365 account because it is personal only. It is not supported in the M365.
That will change obviously in time, but for now.
I hope so because it's sure messing with a lot of heads.
Yeah, it will. I mean, it will. I'll just leave it at that. There's probably some kind of a limit, right? I mean, a daily limit probably. And a daily limit, definitely, right? You couldn't just sit there and generate 1,100 images. It would probably, you'd lose your tokens or whatever. But I don't, we'll see if there's one over the course of a month. But, for my needs, it might be fine. So anyway, I guess my point is I initially was dismissive of Microsoft Designer, but now it might become a core part of my workflow because this thing is free. And why not? So it's something to look at if you like to generate images. I like the Copilot one still the best of all of them, the big ones. So it's the same back end,
Yeah. No, I did. I had a great demo of this Designer by an MVP a couple of days ago, and I was blown away.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
Yep.
Mr. Campbell, is there a run as radio in our future?
Yeah, it came out this morning, actually. So, I've had an ongoing series talking about the co-pilots, of course. And the air quote phrase is always make sure your data estate is in order. Which is just, like make sure your systems are secure. It's one of those impossible to know, never complete kind of problems. And we've always talked around what that would look like. And I decided to stop fooling around and just go to the expert. And Joanne Klein is that expert. The tool you want to use if you're really going to take an organization's data security, governance, and data sets governance and controls and so forth seriously is a product called Purview. And so Joanne is like one of the best in the planet on Purview. And so we got a chance to just go down and say, all right, I got this problem. I've now gotten budget to clean up the data security problems, right? Because the boss wants all the co-pilots, and I've warned them of this problem and they're afraid. So now I have budget to go for it. What do I do? And so we started going through like exactly what Purview can do for you and its tagging approaches and so forth. What's interesting is to see that the LLMs are showing up in Purview itself. It's getting very good at identifying sensitive information on its own. So, it's really good at recognizing personally identifiable information. So in some ways you could count on it for turning up things you don't even know about. But I mean, the main thing here is just identifying data that's sensitive and how it's sensitive. And then it also switches over into rights management as well. So internal documentation can't be taken out of the office effectively if you've tagged it. As soon as it's like that, it's got a security profile on it and can't be opened only under certain circumstances, only for a certain duration of time. Like there's lots of protections there. And absolutely sort of this is the full on, so you want to do Copilot right way. Here's an earlier step. And we had an awesome conversation. She's brilliant.
Well done, runnersradio.com. Now,
thank you.
You have a unique brown liquor pick this week.
Yes. Well,
I laughed out loud when I saw this.
Yeah. Okay, so we got to set the stage here. And the stage, of course, is that the last half of July is sort of the big birthday weeks for a bunch of my friends, including myself and my wife. And so we hosted a party over this weekend.
Happy birthday.
For a number of friends thank you. And so this was a gift, right? This is one of the whiskeys that I got given, right, which is the Tequila Task finished version of Writer's Tears. So the least I could do was write about it and figure it out. Because we've already talked about Writer's Tears. In fact, we talked about Writer's Tears in January and on show 864, a show we called Word Doesn't Respect Me. Why Writer's Tears? Where does the phrase come from? Well, this is this idea that all of these Irish writers, the James Joyces and the Yeats and the Oscar Wildes and so forth, were heavy duty drinkers to the point where while they were blocked, their tears were alcoholic, right? Their tears were literally whiskey flavored. Yeah, that's the phrase, Writer's Tears. This is the original Writer's Tears is what they call a vatted whiskey. So the company behind it is a company called Walsh Distilling. And they don't actually make their own whiskey, right? They are what they call a non-distilling producer. They're a brand operator. But they chose to make an interesting whiskey in Writer's Tears in that it may be a combined whiskey, it's only barley. So there's no neutral spirit in it whatsoever. They use a couple of different distillation processes, which is basically built on what stills could they get access to. So they use the whiskey is actually a combination of 40% triple distilled single malt, which is likely from the Cooley distillery, and 60% triple distilled pot stills likely from the New Middleton distillery. They finish it in American bourbon because that's an inexpensive casking. They don't put an age appellation on it, so it's almost certainly 3 years because that's the minimum amount of time to still call it Irish whiskey. And if you're going to go longer than that, you might tell somebody, so you don't. And in the end, I think the conclusion I came into in January was, listen, Writer's Tears is very tasty, but for its money, you can get a cheaper whiskey. You can get a better whiskey. Like it's mostly you're paying for the marketing of it. Now, and that's fine. The Walshes started out only in 99. They're a newcomer, relatively speaking. Well, they've been in 20-something years now. Writer's Tears they didn't produce until 2009. And they were originally in a partnership with a company called, with an Italian company called Ilva Sarano. Those are the guys who make Death Sarano and Tia Maria and a bunch of other things. And they were trying to build a distillery in Ireland, which they got something up and running in 2016, although they've renamed it a couple of times, and it doesn't make any of the Walsh whiskeys. They make something else called the Busker. And it seems like when that relationship broke down in 2019, that distillery, I think, went with Ilva Serrano. So that's sort of lost. But in 2021, when I wrapped up the conversation in January, I hadn't really gone into other acquirers because it didn't seem to make any difference, just that they had plans to do some other contracting and variations and so forth. But in November of 21, they were actually acquired by a group called the Amber Beverage Group. Undisclosed sum, which is a normal practice. Amber Beverage Group is one of the largest alcoholic producers in the Baltics, of all things. So they actually started out of Latvia. There's a core company that's from like 1900. And at this point, they own over 100 brands. They're very much this massive multinational, like in 180 countries kind of thing. And they routinely buy up liquor distillers and liquor producers. They often keep their principals behind as managing directors. And so that's what they required in 2021. And Bernard Walsh of Walsh Whiskey is on as the managing director for that. And so but they also own, like, I just looked at the last 5, and it was like a couple of distribution houses, but then also like Fabrica de Tequilas Finos, which is a huge producer of tequila, a dozen different brands out of Tequila, Mexico. They've got Mountain Spirits out of Austria, which did a bunch of different kinds of snaps and so forth. Like it's a big operation. And so they have a lot of different products that they work in, and they are spending money on Walsh. So they did commit this year to building a new distillery in Ireland for Walsh to the tune of like 35 million euro. So that'll be a serious distillery. And that's how we come to this. Because Walsh has nothing to do with tequila, but Amber Beverage Group, ABG, does. So the way they describe it is writer's tears. So they're doing the same thing with bourbon casking. They probably spends a year or 2 in the bourbon cask, and then they finish it in añejo tequila casks for less than a year. It's almost certainly the Ka tequila.
Wow.
Well, it's a great question, isn't it? We're going to get to the drinking part soon, but
okay.
One of the reasons it's Ka, it's definitely owned by ABG, and this is the graphics they use all the time.
Yeah, the Day of the Dead skull, sugar skull, yeah.
They're doing the Day of the Dead thing, but they call it a Cinco de Mayo whiskey, so it's like, do you understand the colonies? That's not right.
Well, they got the history right.
Yeah. And understand that since the act was Writer's Tears was already going down a bunch of specialty versions, and when ABG got involved, it's even more. Like at the current count, there's like 8 or 9. There's Redhead, Copper Pot, Double Oak, Cask Strength, Mizadura cask, Single Pot Still, Marsala cask. There's even an Inniskillen ice wine cask. Inniskillen's in Ontario, but okay. And then there's this one. And if you look at the link I provided is actually the press release, which I loathe, but that's the way it is because it's ABG that's promoting it, not Walsh Whiskey. And it's actually what I would call, and most whiskey people call, a duty-free whiskey. Right? They signed the deal with. That's right. They sold it to the Loop, which is the Dublin duty-free service. And okay. Listen, in general, I do not buy whiskey at duty frees. If it's a normal whiskey, it's not that inexpensive, or it's one of these special editions, which are designed because you need a gift, or that you don't know enough whiskey to so you buy the pretty bottle, right? That's the game. And this is $150 at 47%.
Oh, that's not
right.
Good. Yeah,
it's crazy.
So I mean, it looks like whiskey.
It's brown.
It looks like
it's got no burn.
Oh man, that is damning with faint praise, as we say.
It is weirdly sweet, and it's got kind of a late finish on it.
So the sweetness is the.
I think it. Well, remember, it's only had it's had 9 months in a tequila barrel, right? Yeah. And by the way, a tequila barrel is an American oak barrel that's just had tequila in it, and if it's an añejo, then it's at least 2 years that it's had tequila in it. This is not great for $150. And just, I went and looked because, I do that for $150. Do you know what kind of whiskey kind of Irish whiskey? You can buy a bottle of Yellow Spot for that.
Yep.
You can buy Redbreast 15 for for $150. Like really very nice Irish whiskeys. And then go down from there. The Redbreast 12 is only $60. So is Green Spot. And heck, regular Writer's Tears is $42, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with that, except that it's actually a $25 whiskey. So why should you buy this? If you're a whiskey fan.
Well, the bottle's cool.
The bottle's cool.
Container of the bottle.
No, you should. My point here, if you're a whiskey fan, you don't buy this. This is a whiskey that your friends buy you because they want to get you something you haven't had.
Oh,
yeah.
And you only do that once.
It's brutal, though. It's brutal.
Just once. Right? They should, because they're only going to buy a whiskey you haven't had. So now they've done it. They won't do it to you again. You're not going to buy this.
So you're saying this is a rite of passage that we just need to accept?
Listen, my friend gave me this whiskey for my birthday.
He meant well, but sometimes,
No, and he did mean well, and he did his task, right? Which is to get something unusual. It's unusual, right? It's harmless, got a little heat, a little burn going on now that I've drank a little of it at lunchtime. But yeah, it's nothing profound. It's just a curiosity and a pricey one.
Oh,
right?
Boy.
So again, if you've got a friend who's had everything, and look, I would hate to buy whiskey for me. Like that's impossible.
I mean, I'm just saying I'm a writer who spends a lot of time in Mexico. So the whole notion of this thing is intrinsically appealing.
Yeah. Well, and except that I imagine that anybody from Mexico would look at this and go, why did you say Cinco de Mayo? Like what?
They're like, I need you to sell your home and move right now.
Yeah.
Like just leave.
What are you doing?
Yep.
And it's not like there wasn't somebody down in Mexico that knew that. They bought a huge facility in tequila, right? Like those guys know. And by the way, those,
they've done better. It's too bad.
And COD tequila makes a Day of the Dead tequila that are in skulls, right? It looks exactly like this, right? Like this graphic is exactly like
the container is that 3D.
But it's a Day of the Dead whiskey.
Yes.
Right. That's what it is. I suspect that there was an American involved who said, we don't have anything to do with Day of the Dead. But Cinco de Mayo, that's a party. So, okay.
The Mexican St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah. Listen.
In the United States.
I think it's a very good idea. And I talked about this in the Black Carnitas, right? Yeah. It's also made in tequila. To age tequila in bourbon casks. I think that's a good idea. I don't think that it's a good idea to age whiskey in tequila casks.
It seems like a bad thing. This is vodka in a crystal head, autographed by Dan Aykroyd. How much would you pay?
Yikes.
I mean, it's basically grain alcohol has been cut with water. Right? It's vodka.
I mean, I'm sure
I like the bottle, though.
Money.
Yeah, the bottle's great. And that's, the nature of vodka is that you have to sell it on marketing because you're not going to sell it on the taste of the product. That really doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway.
It feels like somebody's opened this. There seems like there's some missing.
It might be water all the way down.
Probably,
that's what I used
Dan
to
Aykroyd drank some of it before I went out.
Anyway.
His autograph got a little bit smudged. He signed it for me, but his autograph got just a little bit smudged.
Anyway, I'm glad I've had this because it reinforces things I already thought. Like in general, I think that duty-free whiskeys are a mistake. And I think that these combined caskings are very challenging to do. And when I look at what ABG has been doing with all of the variations, this is not a company who's carefully crafting a bunch of different whiskeys and getting the most from it. This is a company that's just trying to find something that'll sell. Yeah. And so they make as many things as they can lay their hands on based on what they already have access to.
It's the Netflix of whiskeys.
Yeah, it's like, listen, we couldn't use this barrel for tequila anymore, so why don't you soak some of your whiskey in it, right? Like that's the sense I get from this.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, yeah, I mean,
it's a cool looking thing.
It is a very cool looking thing.
Really
like
neat.
it's very pretty. I hope they paid that designer well. They did a good job. It should be a Day of the Dead whiskey. That would at least be 100%. Legit.
Yeah.
But and I'm not unhappy to have tasted it. I'm also glad to occasionally talk here about whiskeys that are a mistake too. Right? It's not the only time we've done this so far. Most of the time, I can't just say every time this is great. You should try it because I do say that a lot.
Yep.
And this is one of the ones where I'm like, nope. Well, and the good news is you're probably not going to find it. They've only done one run of this, and I think it didn't sell well. So I think this will be gone soon.
This is also, I have to say, a very instructive lesson about not buying whiskey at airport duty-free shops, so I will make sure not to.
I mean, in general, no.
I think that makes sense.
But the thing is, like, the big thing here is because what the duty frees eventually figured out that people had the internet. And so they'd look at the price of a regular available, like the Macallan 12, and they go, "That's just no cheaper than at home. Right. Arguably, it's more expensive.
They get to carry it back.
Yeah, no, so it's the same price and inconvenient.
Right.
And so then they started making editions that were only there.
Yeah.
Because then you didn't
smart
know.
in its own ways.
Yeah, smart in an evil way.
Yeah, no, it is.
So they can't look it up on the internet anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the only place you look it up is it's only at the duty free, so it's exclusive, right? So, and that at least stabilizes the price, but it doesn't mean it's good. Because if it was good, you'd sell it in more places.
This is like when you go to a restaurant and they're like, our special tonight is some fish thing. And you're like, you're trying to get rid of this, aren't you?
Yeah. In general, the special is sell this before I feed it, buy this before I feed it to an animal.
This is about to go bad. We need to get rid of this.
Yeah. Okay. That's why it has lots of sauce.
It's special.
So much you learn on this show. So much from Richard Campbell and Paul Thurrott. We're glad you were here for Windows Weekly. We'll be back again next Wednesday. Richard Campbell is at runisradio.com, where you can find his podcast, Run His Radio, and .NET Rocks. He also has a very elaborate speaking schedule, and probably is coming to a town near you sometime soon. Do you post your schedule anywhere so people can?
I probably should, because like the fall's crazy. I'm going to be in Ordo. I'm going to be in Warsaw. I'm going to be in Tunisia, Lithuania.
That's
all the normal places.
How do you do this? Do you have a speakers bureau you represents you, or how do you get these bookings?
They reach out to me on LinkedIn mostly.
They know you. They just know you. You got a good rep.
I get around.
You make people happy when you come to speak to them.
There's a lot of me on YouTube these days for certain topics. So often they're asking for a talk I've done before. And
I still have Richard Campbell videos in my saved watch list, whatever it's called on YouTube. The kind of the history of Windows development type stuff.
Yeah. It must be quite entertaining. I mean, if you're getting that many bookings, you're clearly a premier, guy. Like,
I've had some practice.
Yeah.
We've been doing this for 30
I have to watch
years.
some of these videos. That's great.
But we talked about the high school thing. Like, one of the reasons I love talking to high school kids, because they'll kick your butt, man. Yeah. That's a tough crowd.
Yeah.
But if you can light a 15-year-old up, or much less a room full of them, you've done something.
No kidding.
Kidding. It makes those tech crowds simple in comparison. Like, just take them on the ride. Let's go. We're gonna go. It's gonna be fun.
Paul Thurrott is at thurrott.com, THURROTT.com. Be a premium member and you'll get even more great content. And of course, his books are available at leanpub.com, including Windows Everywhere, a history of Windows through its development systems, and also the field guide to Windows 11 now with Windows 10 inside. I guess now that I have a new Windows 11 machine on its way, I'm going to have to get that book so I can know everything there is to know. But are you going to do a special ARM version of the book?
No, I mean, there's no real reason to. I'm not sure. I should cover some aspect of it somehow, but something. I got to figure that out.
Do a chapter.
No, not a special version.
Join us every Wednesday. And of course, watch at your leisure. You can subscribe to Windows Weekly in your favorite podcast player, or watch the YouTube videos, youtube.com/Windows Weekly, or download it from our website. That's another way you get it, twit.tv/WW. Don't forget to join the club if you're not already a member, twit.tv/clubtwit. Paul Thurrott, Richard Campbell, have a great week. We will see you next time on Windows Weekly. Bye-bye.